All right, good evening, everybody. This is going to be Tech Thursdays, episode 128. We are actually, I can't believe it's been that many episodes. So 128. This evening, we're going to be talking about Strix Halo in particular, because I do actually now have access to Strix Halo. You guys can see I've got the GMK Tech mini PC, which we are actually using for this live stream. This entire live stream is being powered by Strix Halo. I basically switched from the typical desktop setup that I have been using every week to this mini PC. And I've got to say that I am quite impressed with this tiny little PC. I've been waiting all year for a laptop that had Strix Halo that was not that 1 HP laptop or that weird Asus convertible. But the more I looked into what this platform is capable of, the more I came to the conclusion that if you really want to see what this product from AMD can do, you really want to look at a small form factor PC, because with the PC form factor, the Strix Halo is allowed to push closer to its maximum wattage range, so you'd actually get to see how performant this thing is. And let me tell you, this thing is nuts. Like, this thing is insane. I can play Monster Hunter Wilds on this without a discrete graphics card, with everything maxed out on 1080p, or I can literally play the game at 4K resolution, but then I have to actually use upscaling from performance level. So I have never been able to do that with any integrated graphics on any laptop or CPU ever. So the fact that I can actually do that is insane, considering how hard it is to run Monster Hunter Wilds. Because we've been covering Monster Hunter Wilds since release, and you guys probably know that the game is lacking in the optimization department. The RE engine has some scaling limitations with multiplayer and open world games. We saw this last year with Dragon's Dogma in a single player game. Now we see this with a multiplayer game, which makes it even worse. And Capcom has tried to address that. They'll actually address it in December. Supposedly they've stated that's the case. But I wanted to see how Strix Halo can handle unoptimized messes like Wilds. And oh boy, it can actually play Wilds, and it can actually play it pretty good. We might actually show that this weekend on stream, because I still have to clear Omega Savage. I'm now able to clear the normal mode solo by myself, but I cannot do Savage by myself. I've gotten really, really close, but I keep dying in the final phase of that fight due to Omega's like crazy fly across the entire arena and slam into you at 100 miles an hour, causing an instant cart, like that kind of thing. But anyway, we'll be talking about the gaming stuff this weekend. We'll be covering Monster Hunter Wilds. I need to do Omega Savage. I'm like super focused, hyper focused on clearing Omega Savage to the point where I've neglected all the other games that have come out this week. So, Final Fantasy Tactics, completely glossed over it. Ghost of Yote, probably not going to cover it now because of Omega Savage. And I don't know. I don't even know what else. I know we have Ninja Gaiden 4 like later this month, but thankfully that game's coming at the end of the month, or at least in the second half of the month. I think it's October 24th. So on the gaming side of things, we have a lot to cover later this month. But anyway, that's not the point of what we're talking about here. So we're going to be talking about AMD Strix Halo, because this platform actually serves multiple purposes. It is kind of a looking glass into the future of what you can expect from, at least from AMD, but we've kind of seen Intel kind of do what they're doing with the tiles with their Arrow Lake processors, and they started with Meteor Lake. So both Intel and AMD are kind of moving in the same direction. They're just leveraging different type of technologies. In the case of Intel, they're using their Foveros, and they're trying to get their own packaging in a tile base. They're calling it tiles. It's kind of like AMD's chiplets. But these tiles that Intel's doing are a lot more compact, and they're a lot closer together. And that's because they're leveraging newer types of interconnect technologies. AMD is actually doing the exact same thing, although AMD's is extremely hard to pull off. They're leveraging a technique from TSMC. We're going to talk about that. So there's going to be a lot of paint on this stream. We're going to be using a lot of paint. But we're going to talk about Strix Halo. We're going to talk about how it is different from the previous CPUs from AMD that they've been leveraging chiplet technology now, basically since 2019 with the launch of Zen 2. And they've gotten a lot of mileage out of their existing designs. I mean, they've gotten what, like six years of CPU products. That's like more than half a decade now on chiplet technology, and now they're actually starting to migrate away from that. We're going to see this with Strix Halo, because Strix Halo is kind of it's like the initial product that is, I don't want to say it's a preview. Well, it is kind of a preview of what to expect with Zen 6 and all the stuff beyond. But that's what we're going to be talking about this stream. So if you're interested in like nerding out on CPU architecture, that is exactly what we're going to talk about. So let me go ahead and bring up Paint here. Let me see. Actually, before I do that, let me bring up Task Manager here. So this is the Strix Halo. So you guys can see AMD Ryzen AI Max Plus 395 with Radeon 8060S. So this is the flagship. This is the highest end Strix Halo. This is like Strix Halo in its ultimate form, so to speak, with the full fat 128 gigabytes of memory. This is LPDDR5X running at a whopping 8,000 megatransfers. Yes, 128 gigabytes of DDR. Well, it's not exactly DDR5. It is technically DDR5, LPDDR5X, running at 8,000 megatransfers. And that is 8 out of 8. Because this is a quad channel system, we have 8 out of 8 memory slots in use. Windows doesn't even know how to classify this. So it literally says form factor other. It literally just says other because it doesn't know how to classify this. It's 128 gigs, 8 out of 8, because this is a quad channel system similar to the TRX 50 Threadripper system that we talked about like a month or two ago. And it's running at 8,000. Yeah, if you thought 128 gigs at 6,000 was hard to pull off, this is 128 gigs at 8,000. So this is like, the memory bandwidth on this is nuts. It is insane. So this is the reason why this is kind of that secret in the know PC for all those AI enthusiasts out there that don't want to spend $9,000 on an NVIDIA RTX Pro 6000. I mean, you can buy this, you get 128 gigs at this type of speed, and the nice thing about this system, if you don't know, you can actually allocate the memory pool, because remember, we're talking about an integrated graphics chip. This is the Radeon 8060S. This is an integrated GPU with 40 compute units utilizing RDNA 3.5. So it's that weird half generation between RDNA 3 and RDNA 4. And you can see I have specified 32 gigabytes of VRAM on this integrated graphics chip. So I've given it the same amount of VRAM that you would get on an RTX 5090. But what's crazy about this platform is you could technically give this thing 96 gigabytes of VRAM, essentially making it have VRAM equal to the $9,000 RTX Pro 6000. So you can run the multi-billion parameter AI models from LLM Studio with ease on this platform. You can fit the sort of models that you would require. Normally, you would need an RTX Pro 6000 to fit certain models that are like super advanced in terms of how many tokens they generate and how quickly you can respond with like a whole bunch of output. This can do that. So it's pretty crazy. Like DeepSeek runs really, really well on here. We'll probably do some videos on AI in the future. I know that my primary audience is not super enthusiastic about AI, but I just want people to be aware that this platform, there's a lot of people out there that are buying up Strix Halo strictly for the purpose of AI on the cheap. Because this platform is anywhere from, I think, on the low end, you can get a mini PC for like $1,300 up to $2,000. Now, this at the time when I got this from Micro Center. It's always Micro Center. Micro Center really needs to sponsor this channel, just saying. I mean, the amount of stuff that I bought from Micro Center for the last 2 years alone. But I got this from Micro Center because they had it on like $300 off. So I paid what I normally would have had to pay for a decent average gaming laptop, but instead I ended up with this, which is so much better at stuff like AI inferencing because of the amount of VRAM you can allocate. Now I decided to turn it into, I wanted to mimic my desktop system that I basically swapped from to this. So my desktop system was running 96 gigabytes of system memory and 32 gigabytes of VRAM. So I wanted to do 32 gigs of VRAM, basically like an RTX 5090, and then I did 90. Well, you take 128 and you subtract 32, so you're left with 96. So I effectively have, it kind of shows it right here, that second number, 95.6. So 96 gigabytes of system memory. I mean, that is still way above average in terms of how much system RAM you have versus like most average desktops. All those gamers out there, most gamers are probably still on like some puny 32 gigs of system RAM, you know? Here we got 96 and then we have 32 on the GPU. I mean, this has more VRAM than like all those 8 gigabyte GPUs that are so irrelevant now with the way gaming has gotten so demanding. It's insane to think that this mobile GPU is not going to have stutter issues due to running out of VRAM because it has near infinite VRAM for gaming. Like, it's hilarious. It's like, wow, this thing can outperform like 40, 60, 50, 60. When those 8 gig cards run out of VRAM, you know, you start getting stutters and frame dips and all that kind of stuff. This thing, no, it doesn't have any of those problems. Now, I will say out of the box, the default setting is 50-50 split. So they give 64 gigabytes to the CPU and 64 gigabytes to the GPU, which is actually an interesting way to set it as a default now that I think about it, because you essentially already have, out of the box, 64 gigabytes of VRAM for your AI use cases. And that isn't even counting the fact that this also has a 50 TOPS NPU on top of that. So it also has this. And then Windows will dynamically select, like, I don't know, I think it'll reserve up to half of your system RAM to determine, like, how much the NPU can utilize if it's doing Copilot Plus activities or whatever. So that's kind of what that does. And then, you know, it comes with I think the vendor on the built-in SSD varies, but mine comes with a 2 terabyte. It's like some off-brand Phison, which you can't buy online anywhere. Maybe on like Alibaba or something you can get one of these. But it comes with a 2 terabyte Phison Gen 4 SSD that gets the full Gen 4 speeds. And then I've added, if you guys watched my overview video about this device, I added a 4 terabyte Crucial P310. I actually have the box still on the desk here. So we got a Crucial P310 4 terabyte in here. So I have 6 terabytes storage. I've got the Windows boot drive, a 2 terabyte, and then a 4 terabyte storage. We're actually locally streaming. I'm saving a recording of this 4K live stream to this Crucial P310 because I like to test my hardware to make sure nothing is defective. So we're testing the SSD. This is a very good real-world test for this SSD to make sure that it's not faulty. And then I have a USB, what do you call it? One of those USB hubs plugged into the second Thunderbolt 4. Yes, this platform has full USB 4, dual USB 4 ports on here. So it's fully backwards compatible with Thunderbolt 4, Thunderbolt 3, and forwards compatible with Thunderbolt 5. But do remember that Thunderbolt 5, if you connect Thunderbolt 5 and USB 4 Gen 1 or Thunderbolt 5 with Thunderbolt 4, it's always going to favor the lowest common denominator. So you're going to get Thunderbolt 4 speeds, even though you're hooking up Thunderbolt 5 docking stations to it. But you can connect Thunderbolt stuff to this. I've tested a bunch of Thunderbolt devices. All of them work flawlessly with this, despite this being an AMD platform. So that goes to show that there is kind of feature parity today. I think the one thing that I will say on the mobile side, Intel does have an option, and this is also true for their Arrow Lake desktop. They do have an option for a Thunderbolt 5 add-in card, which will eventually show up as USB 4 2.0, which we might see with Zen 6. I expect us to see some form of Thunderbolt or USB 4 Gen 2, aka Thunderbolt 5, on Zen 6 next year. So, you know, it's just something to look forward to if you're someone who uses Thunderbolt or into that ecosystem. So I actually rely very heavily on Thunderbolt. So I need to have Thunderbolt, especially now since a lot of modern motherboards are moving away from internal PCIe expansion slots. Now it's like at best you want a motherboard that ideally has an X16, an X8 for like a second GPU that can share the lanes with the top one, or you have an X4 at the bottom. But the X4 slot is starting to become less and less relevant, and it's mainly because of USB 4 becoming more mainstream. So this is why we talked about this a few weeks ago when we went over like all the mobile platforms. But essentially, in this day and age, if you're buying a mobile platform or even a desktop, you should expect, or you should at least opt for a platform that has USB 4. If you don't think you need USB 4, it's one of those things where you don't think you need it, but then someday along the lines, there's something that pops up and it's like, oh, you need USB 4, but you don't have it when you actually need it. So I'm the type of person who tends to buy something with a feature that I might not need immediately, because it's always better to have something and not need it than to not have something when you actually need it. So anyway, that's how I operate. So anyway, let's get into the discussion here on... actually, was there any questions specifically on this? I know RK had asked, how is the fan noise? So the fan noise, if the system is under load, you will hear the fans. However, the fans are the same sort of fans that you would hear in a laptop. It's using those blower-style laptop fans. It's dual fans, and then it actually has an axial, a 120 millimeter like case fan on top of that. So it's got like 3 fans in there. Actually, I can kind of show. Let me see. So let me go ahead and... how should I do this? Well, if you watched the unboxing video, the overview video, we kind of already showed all the platforms. I have this thing fully loaded. I don't have an SD card installed, but you can put SD cards in there, full SD cards, or you have to, if you have a micro SD, you have to use the adapter. And then you can see I have a USB 4 on the front, 2 USB 3.0, those are the 5 gigabit, the blue USB 3.0, and then we have a front-facing audio 3.5 millimeter combo jack. This platform has 2 of them. It has one on the front, it has one on the back. I'm actually using the one on the back. And then I have it fully loaded. Every single USB port, both USB 4 ports, and all the HDMI display port, all those things are in use. I'm actually driving my 4K monitor off of the USB 4 port, because both USB 4 ports support DisplayPort Alt mode. So you can drive a total of 4 monitors, 4 like, you can go quad 4K, 144 hertz if you wanted. Like, it's insane. Like, it's crazy what you can do with this thing. It's just a tiny little mini PC. I'm not super familiar with mini PCs. I know a bunch of people have kept asking me, like, will you do a small form factor build? Please do a small form factor build. I'm not a big fan of small form factor builds because I like the really big, chonky GPUs that are quiet. And if I was gonna do small form factor, well, this is as close as it's gonna get to me doing small form factor. It's gonna be an actual mini PC like this. So mini PCs are great for some use cases. You mini from MSO1 as the Proxmox hypervisor. Yeah. So about the fan noise. When this mini PC is idling, the blower style fans turn off completely. They literally just shut off. Just like a laptop when the laptop is idling. Now, as far as I know, the 120 millimeter fan, so the big axial fan, I don't think that one turns off completely, but it spins down to the point where you don't hear it. You literally have to stick your ear right up against the chassis to listen for the vibration of the fan still spinning. But yeah, it's dead silent when you're not doing a whole lot. Like right now, the fans are spinning because I'm live streaming, obviously. So there's a load on the system and it's doing a bunch of stuff in the background. And you guys can see it's literally using the video codec engine to encode the live stream using AV1 encoding. We've got AV1 encoding on this platform, in addition to VP9, HEVC, H.264, all that stuff. So it has dual encoders. It has dual media engines. So I'm actually dual encoding right now. We are streaming to YouTube using HEVC, so H.265. And on the back end, I am also locally recording my own copy of the live stream so I can edit. Like if I want to cut a section and turn it into its own YouTube video, I can do that. So for that, I am using AV1 to reduce the file size on the SSD. So that's exactly how we're doing. That's why you guys can see there's constant activity on this crucial P310 because we are constantly writing using the AV1 encoder right now to locally record in 4K 60. We're dual 4K 60 encoding right now. That shows you, and this thing is only at like 60% utilization. So this thing is insane. I was like, man, a mini PC dual encoding 4K live streaming in real time encoding with this type of quality, this is sick. It's so good. Like I was thinking, man, I'm not a big fan of mini PCs, but man, this mini PC is like on a whole nother level. This is the future. This is the future of technology. I feel like when I powered this thing up, I was like, man, the memory training on this is so fast. And the fact the memory training itself is so fast. And it's running 128 gigs at 8,000. And it's so fast at memory training. I was like, whoa, okay, this thing is like next generation right here. This is like no joke, man. And I put it to sleep. I tested standby. I tested hibernate. Man, this thing wakes up so fast from hibernate compared to my desktop. The godlike takes like 40 seconds or 45 seconds to wake up from hibernate. This thing wakes up from hibernate in like 10 seconds. Or it's like maybe 15 seconds. So I was, what the? You see the little logo pop up, bam, spin, desktop screen right there. Wow. Memory training, instantaneous. I don't know what, this is like, wow. Yeah, this thing is good, man. Strix Halo is impressive. I mean, I was like, man, is Lenovo going to release a ThinkPad with Strix Halo? Should I wait? And then I know HP is selling a Strix Halo mini PC. They're the only big OEM that I'm aware of. I know Dell doesn't have one. I think Lenovo might. I know Lenovo is doing Strix Point. Like, they've got HX370 in a mini PC. But I don't think they have Strix Halo. At least I'm not aware of one right now. There may be one, like, in the Chinese market that they might have. But yeah, this GMK tech is pretty good, man. I'm pretty satisfied with it. You know, it's upgradable. Obviously, I maxed it out already with the NVMe, the second NVMe in there. You can plug in a Thunderbolt dock and add more storage if you want. You can literally plug in a dock and connect an external graphics card if you wanted. I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of having powerful integrated graphics. But hey, technically, you could hook up an RTX 5090 in a eGPU and have a 5090 connected up to Strix Halo. Like, if you wanted, I mean, you could. I don't know why anyone would do that, but you could technically do it. Because it supports USB 4. So basically, any platform that has USB 4 can support external desktop graphics cards. Like, full-on desktop graphics. I could connect 5090s to this thing if I wanted. Via the dock. One on the front port, one on the back. Like, wow. It's like, it's going to be severely bandwidth bottlenecked over PCIe because we're talking like PCIe Gen 3x4. So you're going to lose at least 15% performance on that 5090. But still, you know, like the fact that you can do it. The fact that it's possible. That's what's so intriguing about this. The fact that it has so much capability in such a small form factor, and it's so power efficient. So power efficient, and the memory is like insanely fast. Does the 8060S really compare? Well, you guys can be the judge of that when we do gaming on it. We'll be doing gaming content on it this weekend, probably. I need to do Omega Savage, though. I just keep thinking, anytime I say gaming, I immediately think, oh, Omega Savage. I need to complete Omega Savage. It's like a like brain override thing. Must complete Omega Savage. Must complete Omega Savage. Like, I've tried Omega Savage so many times, and I have failed so many times. It's so irritating. Is 5090 eGPU via USB 4 or 5090M better? I don't know. I have no idea. Actually, no, I do know. Well, I'll tell you this. 5090 mobile doesn't have 32 gigs of VRAM. 5090 mobile only has 24 gigs of VRAM. The 5090 eGPU would have the full fat 32, because that's literally just a full desktop GPU right there. But yeah, you can connect Thunderbolt docks and things like that. But honestly, if you're thinking about doing that, you're probably better off with a HX370. I mean, we've covered this on a previous live stream, guys. I mean, you guys remember, I've got this. The Lenovo, where is the sticker? With the AMD Ryzen AI. This is the Strix point. So this is the Ryzen 9 AI HX370. Or the Ryzen AI 9 HX370. Yeah, the HX370 with an external docking station is probably a better choice because you're saving money. Like, I don't know. 5090 by itself is super expensive, and Strix Halo is also super expensive. So you're talking like expensive plus expensive means really expensive. Whereas if you go with HX370 on a mini PC, you know, that's not that expensive, and 5090 is still very expensive. So you're going not very expensive, plus expensive is expensive. So I don't know. I think that's a better choice, but you have to decide if you really want to do that. Because the thing is, you have to remember, this thing, you can allocate 96 gigabytes of VRAM to this integrated GPU. You can't do that to a 5090, no matter what. So the 5090 is always going to be capped at 32 gigs of VRAM for model training and inferencing. Whereas with this thing, I can literally turn this thing into a 96 gigabyte VRAM GPU. Meaning this thing's VRAM can match an RTX Pro 6000. That is something that a 5090 literally can never do. It's physically impossible. Like, even if you were to try to mod it, you could get, I think, you could get 64 gigabytes of VRAM if you mod it, but that's still not 96. So, and that's with having to desolder all the RAM chips, and then hoping that the NVIDIA BIOS doesn't, like, lock you out of the fact that you're using unsupported memory modules with the the GPU circuit board. So, there's all kinds of hurdles there. Similar to what they showed, it's like Gamers Nexus did that video where they were in China, and the guy literally made him a 50. Like, what did he do? He made him a 4090 with 48 gigs of VRAM or something. I forgot exactly what happened in that video. It was their black market video that they did. They went to this shop where the guy literally made him a 4090 with the higher capacity VRAM or something. Anyway, so yeah, this thing is pretty impressive, guys. I'm not gonna lie. This is probably one of my most favorite pieces of tech that I've been able to play around with this year. So I was waiting and waiting and waiting, and I was like, I finally gave up on the whole laptop thing and bought a ThinkPad, because it's like, well, I need the ThinkPad because Windows 11, blah, blah, blah. Windows 10's going away, and my computer's super old. My laptop is super old, I mean. So it's like, I gotta do something, or I don't have to do anything, or I just, whatever. So it's whatever. So anyway, so that's Strix Halo. That's the hardware. It's great. Fantastic. So what we're gonna talk about is what to expect with CPUs. Man, okay. The font on this is tiny because I've never used this computer to live stream before. So this is the first time. We are literally live streaming on Strix Halo right now. And I've got it's the same exact setup. I got my triple monitors, two 1440p, the big 4K in the middle, the camera, the microphone, the key. So the fact that the mini PC can handle all of this stuff, no problem. The game controller is connected just because it's connected, just because there's enough USB ports. So, anyway, so Zen, the font's also wrong. Whatever, let's do bold, I think. Zen, yeah, okay. Zen 5. The current generation. Zen 5 uses I don't want to make this too big. I don't want to run out of room. So we'll just say Zen 5, the current CPU, if we're talking fire range, which is probably not going to sell too many units. I think Intel's going to outsell AMD. I think Arrow Lake on mobile is going to outsell AMD's fire range, but Strix Point and Kraken Point are well positioned to be very competitive with Intel. Strix Halo is definitely a flagship thing. So Intel doesn't really have anything today that can compete with Strix Halo. But the point that I'm making is with Zen 5, you have AMD's classic chiplet design. And we'll talk about Intel. I think Intel's supposed to release, unless they canceled it, Intel's supposed to release Intel's supposed to release Arrow Lake Refresh, aka Core Ultra 300 series, in a few weeks. In a couple of weeks, we're going to get new Intel CPUs. So we're going to talk about Intel in the future. We're going to do a deep dive on them as well and what they're planning to do. So we're going to talk about AMD because I need to close the loop on AMD. After this, Strix Halo is literally the final thing. This is the final talking point of the year from an AMD product standpoint. Then we're going to shift focus to Intel because we haven't covered Intel for a while. We were talking about Strix Point a few weeks ago. We're going to talk about some of the crazy handhelds that are coming out of China, like the GPD Win 5 and all that stuff. We're going to talk about that later in the stream. So if you're interested in seeing what sort of products people are creating with Strix Halo, we'll look at that later. But to understand why Strix Halo is such a big deal, we need to first make sure everybody understands how the current technology works. So the current technology with Zen 5, it's the classic chiplet design. The most interesting thing that AMD has done in terms of innovation with the chiplets in the last couple of years now is the 3D V-cache that they've stacked. Initially, they stacked it on top of the CCD. And then more recently, that's what they did with Zen 3 and Zen 4. But what they did with Zen 5 was they actually moved it underneath the CCD. So it's like you had... How can I draw this? So you had a imagine you have the CCD. This is where all the cores are. So you've got your CCD, or no, not CCDs. Well, you have your cores. So you got like what? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4 more over here. So you have your 8 cores. You have your 8 P cores with the caches, the L1s, the L2s, all that stuff. Then you got to put your L3. Your L3 on Zen 4 and Zen 3. Because remember, the 5800X3D was the very first one that had this technology. What they did was they effectively stacked the cache on top like this. This was for Zen 3, aka 5800X3D, 5700X3D, and then later the Zen 4 with the 7800X3D, the 7950X3D, etc. What they did with Zen 5, they did something interesting. This was the unique thing. They actually put it underneath it. So it's actually under the CCD. So the benefit of doing this was the cores were always the thing that ran real hot because the frequency is so high. They clock really, really fast. They're going to generate a lot of heat because you're having to push a lot of wattage. So basically, if you put the cache underneath, up here, this is where the IHS would go on top, and then the IHS would then have the heat sink on top of that. So that would pull the heat off of it. So you got cooling benefits from putting the CCD or the 3D V cache underneath. So that's how they did that. So pretty straightforward design when you think about it, but it was very hard to pull off initially. So it took a lot of R&D to do this. It actually took a lot of learnings from what they did with their interposer. And a lot of people don't really talk about this, but the interposers that AMD did like more than a decade ago now, because if you guys, some of you guys who have been following silicon design, or I guess circuit design, silicon design, I guess, what is it? Chip design. Yeah, chip design, duh. So if you've been following chip design for a number of years now, going on maybe more than 10 years at this point, maybe 15 years or so, you would remember in the year 2015, this is the magic year. 2015, that's a decade ago. AMD released a product on the market, in the consumer market. Now, NVIDIA also had this technology. NVIDIA was doing this only in the enterprise market. But AMD released a product. Who can tell me what was the AMD product that I'm referring to where AMD released a consumer-grade product with interposers that allowed them to put memory and their compute very close together and get efficiency gains and memory bandwidth. Very high memory bandwidth with efficiency gains. What was that product? What was the name of the product? You can either tell me the product code name, or you can tell me the actual product that you could actually buy in the store. What was the name of this thing? Who remembers? The year was 2015. And the last hint I'll give you, it was the summer of 2015. Flavored mold, got it. Well, you're in the right direction, but you haven't said the product name. But you've given the audience a huge hint. Athos? What's that? Oh, Max got it. Fury. Fury. Fury was the code name. It was the R9. Oh, actually, no. It wasn't the code name. It was the product name. R9 Fury and R9 Fury X. R9 Fury and R9 Fury X. Summer 2015, 10 years ago. You had Fury X. It was AMD's first consumer-grade interposer-based design, meaning there was an interposer that that all of these tiles or chiplets, whatever you want to call them, sat on top of. R9 Nano was the third one. There was the R9. So the products were known as the R9 Fury X. This was the flagship. The R9 Fury, that was the cut down, and the R9 Nano. The R9 Nano was unique in that this was essentially the same die as the Fury X. This was the fully unlocked die, except this one had a 175 watt TDP, whereas these were 275 watt TDP. Wow, 275 watt TDP does not seem like a lot of power. We have moved from I remember when 250 watts TDP was considered a lot of power. And then they were like, oh, 275 watts. That's a lot. Now we're at like 600 watt TDP on a 5090, 450 watt TDP on a 4090, 355 watt TDP on a 7900 XTX. So it's like, man, back then these were some real low power consumption cards. But anyway, those were the products in 2015 that featured the interposer with essentially chiplets sitting on top of the interposer. So this was AMD's like early designs that leveraged this. This is what led the way for, this was basically the groundwork for their chiplet architecture that would show up in the CPUs 4 years later. So 4 years later, (2019), they release Zen 2. Zen 2 was the first chiplet-based CPU. And then, yeah, the GPU was not chiplet at that time. They did the 5700 XT. That was a monolithic. Now, they also did Radeon 7 earlier that year. Radeon 7 was basically it was a node shrink of the Vega 64. So it was basically Vega 64 on 7 nanometers. Yeah, it was the world's first 7 nanometer GPU. So that was kind of like the chiplet-based design as well. So they started doing chiplets in 2019 in the CPU world, because a lot of people are looking at it from this perspective. They're looking at it like, oh, AMD's been doing chiplets since 2019. Well, in reality, you have to look a little bit further back, because that's why I wanted to emphasize 2015, because AMD has like 10 plus years of experience now doing interposer circuit design with chips. And that is going to pay off in dividends when we start talking about Zen 6, because AMD basically went from interposer, like organic interposer with the memory, HBM, and the GPU die sitting on top of the interposer. They did that like 2015, then 2019. They started doing the actual chiplet stuff in the CPU, and they basically have done that for the last 6 years. So now that brings us to the current timeline. Okay. What are we talking about? Oh, Apex or Hero. You need to decide if you are trying to do an overclocker board or if you're trying to do a workstation build. Okay, so Zen 5. A couple of things that I want to test to see, like, how many people, like, what is the limit of the understanding here on these CPUs. So okay, how should I phrase this? So you guys understand that the CPU cores themselves are on these. And then you have an IO die down here that has the integrated graphics, the media engine, the fabric that connects all the USB and PCIe and all that stuff. That sits down there on the IO die. What is it that connects? I guess, how does how does the CPU cores, so these CCDs, how do they today connect to the fabric, the IO die? Do you guys know how they connect like that? So a lot of people always ask me, the reason why I'm asking is because a lot of people ask me, when it comes to DDR5, we always talk about DDR5 a lot on this channel, and particularly DDR5 overclocking. Like, what's better? Making the fabric run faster or making the memory run faster? And in that scenario, the answer is always the memory. Run the memory as fast as you can, because the memory is always the slowest component in the system. The fabric is never the slowest component. The fabric is a very... The way I like to think about it is the memory is like a house. It's like a neighborhood street. So, like, the memory is like in a neighborhood. It's like in a suburban neighborhood. And if you want to transmit, like, let's say the data lives in a house, which is in the DRAM. So this is known as DRAM, aka DDR5. So this is the DDR5. This is where, like, let's say the CPU is where the memory protocol needs to go to work. It needs to go to work. So it needs to, like, it lives far away. Because the workplace is in an urban area. And maybe the memory lives in a semi-rural town, and they have to commute to work long distance. When I say it's like, okay, let's say it has like a 20-minute commute one way. Well, where's the slowdown? Oh, well, now, okay, I might actually, this might be a bad analogy because we're going to assume there's no traffic jam, okay? No traffic jam. Because everything here is digital, it's all AI. It optimizes the traffic flow. So there's no such thing as a traffic jam. There's no random accidents. So it's literally driving to the office. The slowest part of this is going to be the residential, getting out of the residential area. Those small lane roads, those traffic light roads, the fact that you have to get up, you have to get out of the house, you gotta go to the car, you have to drive the car, or, well, we're not talking urban environment. So we're not talking about someone who has to get on a train to go to work, because it's like, that's different. We're just talking about if you live in a semi-rural, you're on the outskirts of town, you gotta drive to the office, you gotta get up, you gotta get out. That get up, get out, get ready, go to the office, that part is the slowest part. That is the bottleneck, not the highway that you're cruising on in the car. That might be long distance, but the fact that the speed allowed on the highway is significantly faster. So let's say for those outside the US, the speed limit is 100 kilometers per hour. So that's roughly 62 miles per hour. This is the fabric. This is the FCLK. This is the fabric speed limit. Okay, that's the fabric speed limit. The DRAM speed limit is like, oh, I don't know, like 40, and that's being generous. Well, yeah, 40 kilometers per hour, or whatever that is in miles per hour. Significantly slower than the fabric. So your F clock has this much speed, your DRAM chip has this much speed. So your bottleneck is always going to be on the RAM side, not on the fabric side. Okay? So that's the reason. So there's a reason why I'm saying this. And the reason why we're indicating this is because this will queue up for the discussion later about the question that I asked earlier about what's the interconnect. So basically what my question is, so you guys understand the analogy. The fabric is the expressway or the speedway. The DRAM is the residential neighborhood, the traffic light roads, the stop and go roads, that type of traffic. You can't move. The car physically is not allowed, at least legally not allowed, to move faster than the speed limit in this residential neighborhood. So you're not going to be doing like 100 kilometers an hour in like a school zone. You know what I'm saying? Whereas on the expressway, you're allowed to do that. So the fabric doesn't have the limit on the speed the way the DRAM does. So this is the reason why, in general, the higher the speed on the RAM, the more beneficial it will be overall to the system. Breakfast is the bottleneck. Exactly. Everything done in the house, get in the car, back it out of the driveway, get on the residential road, stop sign, next stop sign, first traffic light, second traffic light, third traffic light. Okay, now we're getting on the highway. Now we're on the expressway, which is the fabric. So that part of it is a lot of time taken. So the faster you can make this go, the more beneficial. It'll have more impact. Like the faster this goes, the more benefit you get out of the system performance. Versus like, oh, I'm going to try to clock the fabric. I'm going to raise the speed limit. Let's raise the speed limit from 100 kilometers to like 110 kilometers an hour. That's really not going to make that big of a difference. Versus if you could somehow cut down on the amount of time. Like, okay, skip breakfast. You know, like that kind of thing. Like that can save like what? 10, 15 minutes. That's a huge time skip. Versus like, oh, we're going to raise the speed limit on the F clock to like 110 kilometers per hour. It's not really going to have that much of an impact. See what I'm saying? So anyway, going back to this. So now that we've established that the highway, the expressway, you get on the highway to go to the CPU. There is a technology that a lot of circuits, a lot of electronic devices, a lot of processors, and this is not just AMD, this is a lot of chips historically, they leverage a technology. And who can tell me, well, without giving the answer, the technology is used to interconnect these CCDs with the fabric. Who can tell me what that technology is? What is the name of it? I'll give you guys a hint. The technology is able to take multiple inputs into a single output and then back into multiple outputs. Okay, forget about this output. It takes multiple inputs and puts them into a single output, but then on the other end, you basically take that and you break it back out into... So, okay, if you're familiar with... There's a term called multiplexer. I don't know if everybody watching this knows what a multiplexer is because it depends on what you studied in college or university to understand the concept of multiplexer. But if you know what a multiplexer is, or maybe you learned it on the job or somewhere, the multiplexer, basically what I'm talking about is a multiplexer that also acts as a demultiplexer on the other end. So it basically multiplexes on both ends of the line, meaning, to go back to our analogy with the DRAM, you need to multiplex the data, although now I don't want to talk about DRAM forever because this is not where I want us to I don't want to be stuck on this DRAM discussion. You multiplex, you take multiple inputs. We're just going to put 4 lines as an example. You put them in the multiplexer. And then you get a single output. This is a multiplexer. So you have input, you have output. You take multiple things in, you mush them all together, and you get the output. So you can basically think of this as taking something that is serial, or no, you can take well, not serial, parallel, and you get serial on the other side. Meaning, if I've got, I should have used colors. I messed up because I should have used colors, but whatever, I have to use paint. So we have input 1, input 2, 3, and 4. And then on the output, you might have this guy here. This guy's in front of him. Then this guy. And this guy. So your inputs are your components. Your output is your composite signal. So if we're talking about this from an analog circuit standpoint, you have components of the signal, but when you combine them via the multiplexer, this thing, you get a composite, which is composed of all of your components. Your question is whether a regular gamer can handle it? A regular gamer? Wait, you're asking if a regular gamer can handle this? Maybe. I think they could. So, the output is basically a composite signal of all your inputs. That's basically what a multiplexer output is. So the reason why we're talking about this is because we're trying to understand how Zen 5 communicates from the CCD cores down to the Infinity Fabric. And the way it works is it's using this type of thing. Now, what do you do when you get to the other end? So once you're in here, you have to break it back out. Man, I need to delete that little DRAM thing. We don't need this anymore. So you break it out on the other end. You basically, like when you get to the other end, you have to decode your signal back out into its original components. So you get your outputs on the other end too. Now the action of doing this is not called multiplexing. It's called demultiplexing. You're literally breaking out the original components back into their original forms. So you have the multiplexer side and you have the demultiplexer side. So if we're going from left to right, you have multiplexing happening here and you have demultiplexing happening over there on the other end. Now remember, this is this has a bidirectional flow, so you're going to have one set of lanes that are going this way, then you have another set that are going that way, which are essentially using the exact same setup. So this Does anybody know what this is actually called? I don't expect anybody watching this to know. So I'll just go ahead and tell you what it is. This is known as a serializer and deserializer. Serializer meaning you're turning it into this, where everything is in series or sequence, so it is serial. Or you're deserializing it, so you're breaking it back out into the original components of the signal. So you're serializing, which is effectively what multiplexing is doing, and you're deserializing, which is what a demultiplexer is doing. So you're doing serialization of the characteristic inputs, and you're deserializing of those exact same inputs. This is called serializing and deserializing, or serializer and deserializer. The abbreviated, or I guess the industry standard word, is known as SerDes. We have talked about this on the channel before, a long time ago. I think it was at least 2 years ago, but we have talked about the SerDes before. So the SerDes is what AMD's system architecture is using today for the Zen 5 CPUs. And this is the technique that they have used since 2019 on Zen 2. Your shadow band in liver chat? What? What is that? I don't even know what that is. What's liver? I mean, I know what it is. It's an organ. It's an organ in the human body. Multiplexer mux exists as well for internet connection. Yeah, basically, SerDes is used in a lot of things. It's all around you. Just like how there are spiders and lizards and all kinds of reptiles and bugs all around you all the time, whether you know it or not. They're there. They're just there. So, and birds and other things. And if you live up north somewhere, maybe there's bears, you know. But anyway, SerDes are all around you. They're like literally everywhere. They're in your webcam. They're in your graphics card. They're in your laptop. They're in your internet network connection. They're in your router. They're in your switch. They're in your Wi-Fi network. They're everywhere. I think everyone can see your comment. Everyone can see your comment. There's just no reason to respond because we're talking about the SerDes right now. No, this is not... Okay. Well, okay. So, this is how the CCDs are communicating with the Infinity Fabric. Okay, so now everyone understands the current generation technology, the current technique. But if you want to get more energy efficient, so okay, what are the downsides of SerDes? SerDes is like a highway, high-speed transport, like an expressway. Think of it like going back to that analogy of driving to work from the house. The SerDes is like you're getting on an expressway, a high-speed link that can go from A to Z very quickly, but it queues up all the cars, all the 18-wheeler semis and everybody. They're all on that highway. The SerDes is the highway. So you're using a highway. So what does that mean in terms of practicality? So the nice thing about it, the pros, fast transport for digital signals. You get space savings. Space savings, meaning if you're basically stuffing all these things into one transport lane, now you basically have all these inputs going on a single wire. Because remember, at the end of the day, these are electronic signals. So the orange one is USB. The yellow one is the graphics card. The green one is the Wi-Fi or the LAN connection network. So the green one is literally this live stream. The brown or red one, or whatever that color is, maroon or something, that one is like Windows trying to install an update. I don't know, like it can be whatever, right? The point that I'm making is all this stuff is all sharing the SerDes lane. They're all sharing the highway. They're all going on the highway. So because you're using a highway, you're saving space. Think about the fact that when you have all of them separately on their own little road, or they're on their own little wire, that takes up way more space than if you have them all sharing one wire or one highway. So you get efficiency in terms of space. So you get die space savings. And it's fairly simple to implement because it's such a common thing from a circuit design. I'm not saying it's like super simple, but it's a standard thing that a lot of people have been using for so long now that it is pretty straightforward in terms of implementation. It's like, oh, we want to put a SerDes in. Okay, that means you're going to put a highway in, and you're going to stick all this stuff on the same wire. That's basically how it works. Now the cons. The cons. High power. It uses electricity because you're putting in a big old highway that's going to be high speed. You got to power that up. You got to run the lights that run in the nighttime. You got to power those lights so all those cars can see on that highway because they're going high speed. You got to power it up. So it's going to use a lot of power. So in terms of, so you get where you get space efficiency gains, you lose on power efficiency, especially if you're going to run a lot of these. It's going to run the power up. Number two, you have to account for so you have parallel things going into a serialized container essentially. So now you have to account for potential issues like crosstalk or things like signal integrity. That can be a real challenge. That is more of a challenge when you have a lot of these things in close proximity, but it's also a challenge when you have them going over a long distance. So for example, from the CPU memory controller all the way to the DRAM chip on a desktop motherboard, think about the amount of distance that has to cover. That's going, that wire, it doesn't look to a human eye, it doesn't look like it's that far. But to an electronic circuit traveling at the speed of light, the distance from leaving the CPU socket and going all the way across that part of the motherboard over to the DRAM, then into the DRAM, and then back on the wire, then back to the CPU, that is a lot longer round trip compared to if the memory was literally right there next to the core, like physically next to the core. And you didn't have to actually get on the highway. So there are complexity with signal integrity. We'll use that. HDZ put that in. We'll just use that. That's a summarized way of saying the same thing. And then if it's going far distances, you're gonna have to regenerate. So you need a regenerator, signal repeater, signal regenerator. That's if you're going over a long set of wires. A good example of this is PCIe Gen 5. PCIe Gen 5 requires, I mean, the spec is such high bandwidth that if you need to support PCIe Gen 5 all across the motherboard, you're going to need a lot of signal regeneration because you're talking about very, very high speed, high bandwidth signals. And in order to maintain the signal integrity, which is a challenge with SerDes, that's the con of SerDes. The signal integrity is complex to handle. You need to put in regenerators, and you put regenerators in, that's going to consume more electricity, that's going to bring your power draw up, that's going to also add on to the cost of the overall product. That's the reason why a lot of the high-end motherboards are very expensive compared to the budget motherboards, because the budget motherboards don't have these things, so they're lower-end products. They're cheaper to make. They don't actually have regen. You can't do Gen 5 all the way down at the bottom of the motherboard. Look at the X670E Ace from MSI. That is a high-end $700 motherboard back when it was brand new 3 years ago that actually does Gen 5 all the way down on the very last slot of the motherboard. So that thing, the amount of regenerators on there is insane considering how old that motherboard is to support Gen 5. That's why it's so expensive. So anyway, that's kind of an example of how they leverage SerDes technology in component design or circuit design. And this is the sort of thing that Zen 5 has used for, like, AMD themselves have used this with their literal CPU talking to their fabric, the I/O die, for 3 generations. 3 generations of CPUs. Zen 2 had this, Zen 3 had this, Zen 4 had this. Actually, no, 4 generations. Yeah, Zen 5 has this. 4 generations of CPUs. So they've got a lot of mileage out of SerDes. However, that brings us now to Strix Halo and Zen 6. So for those that don't know, Zen 6 is coming sometime in the second half of next year. So it's about a year away from now, Zen 6 on desktop. So if you're hoping to upgrade to Zen 6, you're going to be waiting another year. Almost. We're waiting about 11 to 12 months. It's 11 to 12 months away. Maybe 10 months at the earliest. But we're talking like very end of August at the earliest for Zen 6. So definitely second half of next year. And it's not going to be using SerDes. It's going to be doing something completely different. And the way we can tell is by looking at Strix Halo. So now let's talk about Zen 6 and Strix Halo. I just realized that this is not... Oh, there it is. Now it's full screen. I had this in window mode the whole time. Need to make this a little bit larger, so I don't need to delete everything that I wrote or drew on here. Okay. But is that all clear? Did anybody have any questions on this? Is all of this clear? Is this clear as mud? What do you think of Sapphire Rapids Xeon? AGDT? It's already outdated. Isn't that like, what was that, 2 years ago? A year ago? What year was Sapphire Rapids? Is that 2023? Oh, it's even older than that, man. Oh yeah, January, it said officially released January 2023. That's already like almost 3 years old. It's like 2.5 years old. We already covered it. We're not going to talk about it now because we've already talked about Sapphire Rapids. That was a while back. It felt like it was. I felt like I talked about that in like. Was that summer 23? Was that was not Shadow of the Erdtree? That was like before Shadow of the No, that was Shadow of the Erdtree was last year. I don't know, man. We talked about Sapphire Rapids a while ago. There's no reason to talk about it now. We will be talking about Intel stuff in a couple of weeks because their new CPUs are coming out real soon. So unless they cancel them, because I haven't heard anything about them, but I'm pretty sure they're coming soon. The Intel CPU. It's basically copy paste Arrow Lake. It's Arrow Lake refresh. Core Ultra 300. We'll be talking about it in a few weeks. It's basically the same thing as like 13 gen became 14 gen. Ultra 200 becomes Ultra 300. Is that kind of thing. Zen 6 will utilize the TSMC 3.2D. Okay, yeah, but what I'm more interested in is the technique that they're going to use. Because they're going with a different approach. So you guys might notice that actually, let me find... Is there like a picture of this thing? Zen 5. Let me see, what does it look like? Is there a picture of this thing? I just want to see... I want to see the CCD. Yeah, this thing. I guess that's a good one. And then what's another one like Zen or Strix Halo die? Yeah, this one. Okay, this we can use the tech. It's always Tech Power Up, man. Tech Power Up always has like all the stuff. Tech Power Up always got the good stuff. Okay, let's go here. What do I do with this? Oh, now it's huge because I had Task Manager on there. Okay, so Zen 5. So notice how the CCD is over here. There's the cores. So you have your 8 Zen 5 cores. You have your PHYs for the Infinity Fabric interconnects. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you have, what is that, 18? But I think one of those is a load store or something like that. So you basically have like 16. So you got 8 on both. It's like an 8 plus 1 on the 5. So you have your Infinity Fabric. Now, Epic uses both of these. Ryzen only uses one of these Infinity Fabric PHYs per CCD. That is the difference between what AMD calls, they have a phrase for this. What do they call this thing? The GMI narrow and GMI wide. Epic uses wide, Ryzen uses narrow. That is the difference. That is the reason why Epic has so much more memory bandwidth than Ryzen. Now, I don't know what AMD... it's hard to say, like, if they'll actually go with wide on consumer desktop next generation. It's interesting because they're actually... So all this stuff down here in yellow, this IFOP, PHY, these are the physical SerDes lanes. These are the highways down here. So, we know that when we look at Strix Halo, well, it doesn't have a high enough zoom. Oh man, can I get a better zoom on that? Okay, well, this kind of shows it. So, yeah. So, okay, they kind of show it here. This is the IO die. Do they have the CCD? Yeah, they have the CCD. Okay, this is what I wanted to show. So you guys look at this. This is the CCD on Zen 5. This is the CCD on Strix Halo. You've got, down here, you have your PHYs. which are basically your SerDes. These are the highways. These are the expressways, the high-speed interconnects, the serializer, deserializers. So all the data coming from the CCD cores, they all queue up into the PHYs, get on those highways, they get in the lanes, and they go down to the fabric. Do we have the fabric on here? That is a core. This is the fabric. Yes. So they go in here, they go to the fabric, and if they're going to that Tokyo Game Show anime convention, they get on that 128-bit DDR5 5600 PHY, and they go out. Well, actually, no, that's where they live. Never mind. They go wherever they need to go. Okay? So you got your PHYs, so you got your SerDes over here in red for your DDR5, and you have your SerDes going to the CPU down here in yellow. So this is the Zen 5 I/O die. You have the display engine here in green. This is the thing that handles the integrated graphics. I think there's actually a name for this. I think it's like Radeon 610 or something. I forget the actual name for this thing, but this is the Radeon integrated graphics in this teal green. And then over here, what's interesting is down here in the lower left, they have the media engine. This is for encoding. Like you can encode HEVC, for example, and you can decode AV1 on Zen 5 on desktop. So that is kind of like a more, actually, does that show? Yeah, right there. So these things down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are the SerDes, the PHYs with the SerDes that interconnect to the CCD or to the I/O die, because this is an actual CCD. That's actually a good picture right there. All right, so now we understand the SerDes. Now let's look at Strix Halo, because Strix Halo is very different. Strix Halo, you guys see down here, you can't actually count the physical express lanes of the SerDes. All you see are these little tiny, it's up here at the top. See where it says IF, that stands for Infinity. It says new IF OP. New IF OP. Okay? The Infinity Fabric's next generation is going to use this type of interconnect. Now, the big mystery is, what is this actually composed of? Because this is way too many little dots or lines for this to be traditional SerDes. This doesn't look like a SerDes. It looks like something else. So this goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the stream. So remember, this is the SerDes. It's basically the highway. This is the expressway. If you're not going to do this, what is the alternative? If you're not going to combine things onto a serial pipeline, your alternative approach is literally going to be each one of these 4 little signals, you got to give them their own wire. Because they got to go from point A to point B. They don't have time to be sitting around. So again, we have our orange. So we got like our USB or whatever. Well, it doesn't matter at this point. You guys understand, you got your little components. But now, we're not using SerDes. We're just going to go straight up traditional. We're just going to go straight up wires. Give everything wires. Everybody gets their own wire. You get from point A to point B, you're on your own wire. You got all your wires. So all these little dots that are shown here up at the top here. I don't know. Can I zoom in on that? No, it doesn't seem to work. If I zoom, no, zoom doesn't work apparently. Not on this. Okay, so what if I do this? Yeah, right there. All these little lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's just too many to count. There's way too many to count. Because the thing is, this is literally only the surface. We haven't even looked like underneath. The cross section of this is going to have way more wires. Because this is literally, they're all stacked on each other. Think of it more like a pipe system. It's like a plumbing system with so many pipes, all stacked, dense packed, all next to each other. You got a whole bunch of them. AMD actually has like a name for this. But what this is not new. This is not like a brand new thing. It's like, oh, AMD invented a brand new way. No, this is not new. This is actually old school, traditional. The SerDes technique is newer than what AMD is doing here. But the fact that AMD is doing this is literally borderline insanity. Because we're talking literally thousands of tiny little wires all stacked together. AMD calls this the fan out. The technique is called fan out. They're going to fan out all the signals into their each individual wires. They're going to give them a whole bunch of wires. Now, some might call this the sea of wires. Because if you look at it under a microscope at a cross section, all you will see are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of wires, all interconnected, routing what looks like infinity. This is TSMC's new packaging technique. This is known as Info OS. This is the integrated fan out, because remember, this technique is not SerDes. It's called fan out. Integrated fan out on substrate. Meaning they're using a substrate interposer to basically allow all these wires to be so close to each other without like impacting the signal integrity of each one. That is what makes this borderline insane to pull off, because you've got so many wires in such close proximity, and they're so small, and they're carrying all these signals, all in real time, constantly, at the speed of light. This is fascinating to see that they've actually built something like this. Like the plumbing system on this for all these wires to interconnect all those electronic signals from the cores is like on a whole nother level of circuit design. So this is the sort of thing, in order to pull this off and have it not fail miserably, this requires that whole 10 to 15 years of experience that we were talking about at the very beginning of the stream. When I talked about the year 2015 and the year 2019 and the progression, because they started the interposer designs, like 2015 was not the year they started. 2015 was the year they released their first product, which means they've been doing this since the early 2010s. So they have 15 years of experience playing around with wire routing through various interposer technologies. That's what this is about. That's what makes Strix Halo so interesting to look at from a circuit enthusiast, or I guess an electronic design enthusiast standpoint. Anyone who is super into computer hardware is probably geeking out, nerding out over this, because this represents the future of CPU design. Because if you want to keep up with how small the nodes are getting, you're going to need a lot of wires. And those wires are going to be real small, and they're going to be really, really dense packed. Now, I don't know if does this article have a, no, it doesn't have one. And this one doesn't have one either. Oh, well. But that's what they're going to use. They're going to use a new way to interconnect literally thousands of wires. So instead of going with the easy method of the SerDes, where did I put that? Here it is. So instead of doing this, which is what they're doing for Zen 5, they're going to do this for Zen 6. So this is Zen 5. This is Zen 6. So looking at it like this looks more complicated than this. But in reality, this is a lot more complicated than this. Because this is hitting the easy button. This is like, oh, I've got literally thousands of guys over here that need to get over here. What's an efficient way to do that? Okay, line them all up in a serializer, in a SerDes, and send them through. Whereas here, well, we'll just give all of them their own lane. No, it isn't even their own lane. They're literally going to give them their own road. Every single one of these signals gets their very own individual road, their own street for them. Not a highway. They're not sharing lanes. There's no lane. No, they get their own street, all to themselves. So imagine the amount of routing complexity of having to route literally, because we've shown only 4. But in reality, there's literally thousands of these. Not 4, there's thousands of them. And you have to give all thousands of them their own streets, their own roads for them to travel across. That is why this is next level near insanity in terms of how they were able to pull this off. The fact that they were able to route literal thousands of signals across a sea of wires is mind-boggling from a circuit design standpoint. That they were able to pull this off, and that is what Strix Halo represents. And that is what Zen 6 will most likely have. So now you guys see at the microscopic level, at the nanometer level, how interesting Strix Halo is. Not only is the final product amazing, but you get down to how the actual design works, like the nuts and bolts of what's actually going on under the hood. Man, that thing's pretty crazy, like that it actually works that way. And the thing with this is you literally now have full parallelization. So what does that mean? That means that you don't have these guys waiting to get like the onboard process of the multiplexing and then the off ramp demultiplexing. You don't have any of that anymore. So guess what? That means reduction in latency. That means things like, oh, I don't know, instantaneous memory training, or like really, really fast memory speeds that work, that just straight up work. They just straight up work. From, at least from this point of view, from inside the CPU, all the communication between the cores and the fabric are now like much, much faster. Much faster. Because you don't have to queue up. You don't have to stand in a line on the entrance ramp on a Monday morning trying to drive to work. You don't gotta wait to get on the highway because now you literally have your own street that's just for you. Oh, imagine that. That sounds amazing. So that is the difference. So Zen 6 is using what seems like a radically new technology, but it is actually a more traditional approach to doing things, because before there was such a thing as the SerDes or the multiplexer, before these things existed, the only way to go about doing this was to literally just do this. So they've gone back to the basics. Who would have thought they went back to the basics? Circuit design has gotten so complex that they went back to basics, but then made the basics super, super complicated in terms of circuit routing and wire routing. The CAD program, oh man, the CAD design, wow, man. They're using something called the redistribution layer to pull this off. They're using something called the RDL, redistribution layer. The redistribution layer is essentially that stack of wires that are just dense packed into the sea of wires. That is what they're doing with Zen 6. And we've seen all of it with Strix Halo. And the fact that Strix Halo is this performant in such a low power form factor, small form factor, is kind of, it's a sneak peek of what you can expect to see when they're able to go all out with the full desktop implementation. And then also the server implementation, the Epic implementation. Oh, man. So very, very interesting stuff coming a year from now. So this live stream is kind of like a sneak peek into what you can expect with the next generation of desktop computers. And it's going to be fantastic. So that's why, actually, go back here. Yeah, that's the reason why. If you look at these pictures, now this only shows the one CCD, but you guys can see there's a gap here. Notice how there's this distance. The CCD, the chiplet is here, and the iodide chiplet is over there. There is a distance between them. The SerDes Express Highway is that distance between them. With Strix Halo, notice how there's literally no distance. It's almost like they're right next to each other. They're still doing these chiplets, but they're now so close together because they don't have the SerDes Highway between them. It's like near instantaneous now. So we're talking really, really tiny, very, what is the word? Like very precise placement of all these thousands of wires. Yeah, the wafers are going to be expensive. At least initially, they're going to be expensive. Because this is using the next generation packaging technique from TSMC called Info OS. But the fan out. So very, very, very interesting stuff. But you can see Strix Halo is so close. Like the CCD, the two CCDs, this is a 8-core plus another 8-core, 16-core, 32-thread on Strix Halo. Dense packed, so close to the new next generation I/O die. And this thing's got 40 compute units in the middle. Like this is the most powerful integrated graphics on the planet right now. It's probably going to be that way for a while. Because you've got 40 compute units in here. This thing, it's like having a, what is this, like a desktop. It's like a desktop, like somewhere between it's like a 4060 Ti. Somewhere around there. But it's so low power. And it's so dense. And there's literally no powering the GPU because it's all just running off of this. The 10950X will be 24-core beast with a sea of wires. Yes, it will. It will. That is correct. Well, yeah, it probably will. You know why? This is the reason why. Because when you look at Strix Halo, you can see the 8-core CCDs right here. 8-core CCDs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-core CCD. This is a Zen 5. CCD. The only difference is you don't have the SerDes expressway anymore. Now you literally have the sea of wires connecting up here at the top. Notice how there's a question mark because they're not really sure what's going on. But that's the interconnect technology they're going with. So that's basically what AMD is doing is they're just straight up brute forcing the design. They're just going, okay, we have to route thousands of wires. Okay, let's do it. Roll up the sleeves, get out the CAD programs, let's build it out. Route wire number 1, wire number 2, wire number 3, wire number 4. 4 hours later, wire number 400, wire number 401, wire number, like that's what they've been doing. That's how they did it. Like that's crazy from a design standpoint that you would actually route all the wires individually like that and then have the product actually work without any problems, without any massive problems. So I can't imagine like how like what was the hour count on the circuit routing alone, like on the wire routing, like what? Anyway, they could have just put a SerDes, but it's like no, let's not do the SerDes. So fantastic stuff, very very interesting. So the question about the 10950X, so Zen 6, the difference is going to be Zen 6 is going to be on a new node. It's going to be on a node shrink. And when you shrink the node, guess what? Now you can fit more cores in the same amount of area. So instead of having 8 cores, they'll be able to add 4 more cores on this CCD. So you will now have a single CCD that has 12 Zen 6 cores. So the next generation Ryzen 7, the Ryzen 7 10800X 3D, or maybe the regular one, the non-X3D, the 10800X will be a single CCD with 12 cores, 24 threads, leveraging the sea of wires interconnect to the I/O die for super high bandwidth and super low latency. That is going to be incredible to see. Now, I don't know how AMD is going to differentiate the EPYC line from the Ryzen line because it was very clear in how they delineated with the GMA wide versus GMI narrow. Ryzen was narrow, EPYC was wide. Basically, EPYC gets like a whole nother set of highway lanes. Ryzen had one set, EPYC had 2 sets of highways. So if we go to this diagram here, so you guys can see down here in yellow, there are 2 IF Infinity Fabric Op5s. Only EPYC gets to use both of them. Ryzen CPUs only get to use one of these. The second one is disabled on Ryzen. But this all changes when you introduce the sea of wires, because now you no longer have these SerDes lanes here anymore. You're using a completely different physical, aka PHY, interconnect. And how they're going to differentiate EPYC from Ryzen, I mean, I don't know, like EPYC's probably going to have more wires, obviously, but I don't know. I don't really know what they're going to do, to be honest. Like, are they going to all just be the same? Like, how are you going to segment your market differentiators? Like, I don't know what they're going to do. If they're literally going to use sea of wires for everything, that includes EPYC. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, though. But yeah, a Ryzen 7 will have 12 cores, 24 threads on a single CCD. Wow. And the Ryzen 9, what I'm most excited about is the Ryzen 9. The Ryzen 9 flagship can have 2 12-core CCDs. That means 24 cores, 48 threads. 24 cores, 48 threads with the sea of wires. I'll sign up right now, man. I'll test it. We can do a review, whatever. AMD, send me a sample, whatever. We do it. Can't wait. That's gonna be epic. Strix Halo, actually, does it show here? Yeah, so check this out. Strix Halo has quad channel memory. You can see right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 4 memory controllers. 4 memory controllers. And they have 8 memory groups. 8 groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them. And that is the reason why, if we switch to, where's Task Manager? Well, now this is going to mess up when I change it back, it's going to be, I'll try to shrink it back down before I change it back. This is the reason why Strix Halo, which we are literally streaming on right now, has 8 out of 8. Running at DDR5, 8,000. That's like having 8 sticks of DDR5. 8 memory sticks. Total 128 gigabytes running at 8,000 megatransfers. This is a glimpse of the future of the computing technology. That is why Strix Halo is a big deal. All right, let me change this back. Oh, I almost got it. There we go. Okay. Yeah, I can see all 8 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then quad memory controllers. So you got 4-channel memory. This is already, I don't know if we're gonna see this in desktop, like all 4 memory controls. Maybe that's how they'll differentiate Threadripper and Epic from Ryzen. Maybe they'll limit the number of memory channels, but I kind of doubt that, because if AMD's already done the groundwork for quad channel memory on Strix Halo, you might as well just bring this IO die to Zen 6 on desktop next year. So there's a good chance, guys, that Zen 6 launches next year, a year from now, with quad channel memory. For the first time, this will be an industry first. You finally get 4 memory channels on a consumer mainstream desktop platform. Unless AMD is going to make this be like a Threadripper exclusive thing, where on Ryzen, they physically disable 2 of the memory channels. I don't understand why they would do that, though, because, I don't know, maybe yields, for yield reasons on the IO die, they could potentially do that. But I have a feeling that Zen 6 will probably have a different IO die that is lower cost than what we have on Strix Halo. Strix Halo's IO die is very expensive because first of all, it's big, because it has this super powerful 40 compute unit GPU in the middle. So I'm pretty sure they're not going to do that with Zen 6. I think it's going to have a cut down of this, probably like a 16 compute unit or 12 compute unit, or maybe even just 8 compute unit of this. And then the interesting thing is, what are they going to do with the memory? Are they going to do quad channel? If they do quad channel, that's going to be insanely good, because right now, if you want quad channel memory, you have to go Threadripper. That's like the only way that you're going to get quad channel memory. So today, on a modern platform. But if they do that next year, man, this thing is going to really, I don't know. I can see mainstream Ryzen doing exactly what it did to Intel's HEDT and AMD's own Threadripper several generations ago, where when AMD came out with a 16-core, Ryzen 9 3950X, and then later the 5950X, they kind of cannibalized their Threadripper sales, because it's like, why spend all that money on Threadripper if you need a 16-core CPU, or why even bother with Intel's HEDT which the motherboards and all that stuff are super expensive. Like, why even do that if you just need 16 cores and 32 threads? You can just buy a Ryzen, you know? Like, it was much harder to justify spending money on Threadripper and Intel's HEDT when Ryzen 9 first came out. Like, it kind of killed off. Like, Intel literally died off in the HEDT, and then AMD's Threadripper kind of followed them. Like, there was the Threadripper 9, the Threadripper 3000 series, and then they stopped doing the like HEDT. They did Threadripper Pro for the 5000, and then they kind of came back with the 7000. Intel had Sapphire Rapids, but it was kind of low volume because Intel was trying to sell you Xeons. They're kind of not really catering to that market. Intel actually did a similar thing that AMD did. So with their E-cores, Intel was able to market a 24-core 13900K 3 years ago. And it's like, okay, why do you need to buy a Xeon or a Sapphire Rapids when you could just buy a 13900K? You know what I'm saying? Like, why do you even need that? So, same thing that I can see happening next year when Zen 6 comes out. Why do you need to buy a Threadripper if you just need 48 threads, 24 core, 48 threads? You know, with Zen 6, Ryzen 9, you can do that. So really, really interesting stuff when you see market disruptors like this kind of show up every, I would say it's about 5 years it takes to see these market transitions. So we're at that inflection point where we kind of have a glimpse of what is possible via Strix Halo. And then next year, a year from now, you're going to see the full-scale rollout of Zen 6 and all that stuff. Intel's going to bring in their thing next year, too. They're coming back with their tiles and things like that. So both of them are trying to stay at the top of their game. So it's good to see with what's going on in the compute world if you're a tech enthusiast. So lots of interesting stuff's going to happen next year. Next year is that year. Let's put it this way. Next year is the true upgrade year for the enthusiast. You got to wait like 10 to 12 months. Yeah, Intel started adding the cores with the E-cores. I kind of think Intel might bring back hyperthreading next year. I think it was a mistake for them to remove it because it made them look kind of strange. Like, Arrow Lake is actually a good platform. At the end of the day, it's a good platform. It's far better than Raptor Lake, but the fact that it's like you look at the 14900K it's a 24 core, 32 thread, and then the Core Ultra 9. Where's my Core Ultra 9? The Core Ultra 9 285K is a 24 core, 24 thread. The fact that they went down in thread count, in the total thread count, because they got rid of the hyperthreading on the P cores is kind of like, I'm not sure if that was the right call. I mean, the E cores, thankfully, the E cores on Arrow Lake are quite powerful. They're actually very powerful compared to the Raptor Lake ones. So they more than make up for the loss in the thread count when it comes to multi-threaded performance. In general, Arrow Lake is definitely better than Raptor Lake when it comes to multi-thread workloads. But there's a couple of weird design choices that they went with Arrow Lake that a lot of people aren't, in particular the gaming crowd, are not super thrilled about. But other than the gamers, if you forget about the gamers for a second, Arrow Lake is actually quite good, especially in mobile. It's very competitive with AMD in mobile. But the fact that Strix Point is still like super, super good, it's clear to me, AMD and Intel are still technically, they're both competing with each other because they're both the x86 chip design companies. I can't help but think that both of them are trying to like build to match Apple and what Apple's doing in the mobile space. Because man, Apple is just killing it with the M series on mobile. Like the energy efficiency, the single core performance of Apple's M series, the M4 Pro, M4 Max. Like man, I don't know what they're doing. Apple's engineers know exactly how to make a chip that like tech enthusiasts like. Because that thing's, it sips on power, super long battery life, insanely powerful single thread performance. It's like industry leader in terms of efficiency and perf per watt. Like no one comes close. Intel and AMD are like nowhere even close. And then like Snapdragon came out last year with the Windows on ARM, and that was kind of I mean, it drove a lot of industry hype, and then it just kind of like died off when people realized that any sort of work apps that needed x86 instructions didn't really run that well with emulation. So everyone just kind of like forgot about Snapdragon at this point. I'm not saying they're completely dead in the water, but it's just Microsoft's just going to have to invest a whole lot more in development efforts for ARM on or Windows on ARM. What are your thoughts about x86 future? I think it's going to be around for the next several generations. It's definitely threatened by ARM, and I know Intel and AMD are well aware of that. The fact that NVIDIA also has tried to purchase ARM and then failed because it was blocked. I think it was twice that they tried this and it didn't work. And now there's that whole announcement with NVIDIA partnering with Intel. We talked about this last week, about how basically a lot of their customers, they want the x86 in the AI architecture, in the reference architecture. So that's kind of what's driving the Intel and NVIDIA partnership announcement from last week. But that does also mean that x86 will stay relevant, at least for the next 5, 6, maybe 10 years, at least. So, yeah, I don't see it going anywhere. It's definitely threatened, though, because like Linux on ARM is getting better. A lot of the hyperscalers have been trying or have already successfully rolled out some capacity of ARM-based servers in their data centers. And a lot of the reasons that they want to do this is mainly energy efficiency. Like, if you can reduce your... Like, what if I told you, if you're a data center operator and you pay, I don't know, like, let's say your electricity bill is like $25,000 a month. If you have to... If I'm the electricity company and I'm charging you $25,000 a month in electricity, if you could reduce that just by like 15%, there is a lot of incentive to do that. Like, who wants to pay $25,000 on electricity every single month? You know, that's on the low side. If you're one of those hyperscalers, I don't even want to think what their power bill is every month. But if you can use ARM to cut your electricity bill by a third, you are definitely going to want to go with ARM where you can. Sometimes you can't because of app compatibility. And that's really the thing that is holding x86 on two legs. The fact that software compatibility with ARM is not quite there yet. And that's why. Because I can tell you right now, if I'm operating a data center and someone tells me, hey man, if you swap over to ARM, get rid of these AMD EPYC CPUs, get rid of those Intel Ancient Xeon things that guzzle all that electricity, you can throw those out, roll in ARM, and you're gonna go from $25,000 a month on electricity to like $15,000 a month on electricity. Sign me up immediately, man. Sign me up immediately, because I'll get promoted to vice president level in like a year if I can show, hey, we just cut costs by like that much on utility costs. If we cut our CapEx or our OpEx by like this much, like, that's a promotion right there. The CEO's like, man, pat on the back. That's the best decision we've ever made. That's the reason why people are very interested in ARM in the enterprise space. It's all about energy efficiency. Yeah, but see, that is what's holding x86. That's what's keeping x86 alive. But eventually, I think if there's enough engineering and programming efforts made to either build software emulation stacks to run a lot of those x86 things in like a container or like a VM cluster or whatever. You know, you can deploy a VM, a vSphere with all that stuff. You could do even like, I don't know, KVM is going to be kind of weird on ARM, so I don't know about that. But like if you have the containers, like if you're doing like a Kubernetes, and if you can get that thing running on ARM and you're emulating all this x86 stuff in software, eventually they're going to get there where that ecosystem becomes really, really strong and the support from the vendors are really, really good. It's going to take a while, and that's what I'm telling you guys. x86 is still going to be good for like a whole decade. But there's a lot of moving parts behind ARM, and there's like a lot of things. I mean, Apple is kind of the trendsetter in the industry from a silicon design standpoint when it comes to efficiency because they're all in on ARM. Like they successfully completely abandoned x86. Think about that. Apple was able to do it. So Apple proves to the industry that it is possible to fully migrate yourself away from x86. Because remember, Apple used to be Intel x86 just a few years ago. And what feels like almost a lifetime now, they've been on their M series. So if Apple can do it, a lot of people are like, man, if Apple can do it, I can do it too. The way I look at it, man, if Apple can beat Omega Savage, I can do it too. There's no way. Like, if Apple's going to go and win against that thing and clear that fight, I can clear that fight too. That's the way I look at it. You don't see much innovation in ARM. Well, I mean, look at how like phones keep getting better. Although I don't know, I'm not like a huge phone person, so I haven't really kept up with phones. Like my current phone is from 2021, so it's already considered like old at this point. But you know, compare like a iPhone, what is it, the iPhone 13, whatever the latest iPhone is, compared to an iPhone from like 3 years ago, and like how much better is it? I don't know. You know, it's crazy. I just realized the Strix Halo that we're streaming on right now, the fans aren't even spinning. The thing, we're streaming at 4K 60 with the encoder, and the fans on this thing are like turned off. Wow. So, yeah, man, x86, to your point, x86 keeps getting crazier and better. Yeah, this is an example of that. So, this kind of gets me hyped up for Zen 6 for next year. Because we're going to see some pretty incredible stuff next year. I don't know. I'm considering keeping this as my permanent Tech Thursdays live stream PC. Just stream using Strix Halo from now on. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the gaming desktop. It's like I have like a whole gaming desktop that it's sitting on top of, which is just completely turned off and everything's unplugged from it. Apple has very specific criteria for their hardware. Yeah, that's what happens when you have your entire closed garden ecosystem. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. But I do think that they're going to need a lot more development effort if they really want to make ARM fully replace x86. And you know that there's going to be a bunch of people that are in favor of x86, like AMD and Intel, for example. They're going to try to like maintain it to the bitter end. They're going to fight that thing tooth and nail. Although both of them are probably already spinning up their own ARM designs. I would not be surprised if Intel already has their own ARM-based CPU internally, and AMD probably has the same thing as well. No, I'm not on the Flow 13. I'm on the GMK Tech, the Evo X2. Yeah, I think we showed it earlier in the stream. You weren't here. So we are streaming on this thing, a mini PC that's allowed to go full 120 watt TDP. So, let me get where's that little light? Just to show people again who didn't see the beginning. This is the mini PC. This is the mini PC that we're streaming on. You can see every single port is in use. All USB ports, all USB 4 ports, all monitors. If we go around here, oh wait, how can I? Let me see. How can I do this? You can see the PlayStation 5 Pro is right there. The PlayStation 5 launch model is right there. This thing is literally sitting on top of my desktop PC, the Tech Thursdays computer. And we've got all... Does that show that? I don't know if that shows it. Basically, all the ports are in use. Every single one of them. We're running triple monitors, high refresh. So I've got 4K, 144 hertz, 27-inch IPS, and I've got dual 1440p, 144 hertz TN gaming monitors hooked up to this thing. So we're running triple monitors, all high refresh, native resolution, mouse, keyboard, headphone, podcaster microphone, webcam, you name it, docking station, everything connect into it. Fully loaded, everything, rock solid, 128 gigs of system RAM. I've set it to 32 gigs of VRAM. I could go up to 96 gigs of VRAM if I wanted. Yes, it has an external power brick. It's got a 230 watt power supply. Yeah, this is basically like a really good choice for people who want to do like on-prem AI. If you want to run AI apps on-prem and not be limited to VRAM limitations, this is the platform to get. Because this gets you RTX Pro 6000 amounts of VRAM for under $2,000. So normally you would have to pay about $9,000 for an NVIDIA RTX Pro 6000 if you want 96 gigs of VRAM. And on top of that, that's just the cost of the GPU. You still have to build the rest of the entire computer. So you're talking minimum like $11,000 to $12,000 for an AI workstation. Whereas this is under $2,000. This is like buying a laptop that can do everything that I just said on that AI desktop. That's basically what this is. But this is not a laptop. This is a mini PC. Which I think is actually the better way to go. I held off on getting this thing for a very long time because I was waiting for a laptop that I would actually purchase. Because I was not interested in the Asus tablet thing, the Flow 13. I was not interested in that. I was not interested in the HP laptop. It was too small. I wanted a 16-inch laptop that was thicker and had a better battery and, you know, like more robust cooling. But no one wanted to put one out. And then instead we started seeing all these mini PCs. And I'm like, man, the nice thing about the mini PC, it's quieter than the laptop when it's under full load. And it can actually handle the full TDP, whereas a laptop is most likely going to thermal throttle when you're running at the higher end of the TDP. Most laptops are probably not even going to run at the 120 watt. So the fact that we're able to do the full 120 watt TDP, the thing's not even that noisy under full load. It's basically like a laptop, guys. Like, someone was asking about the fan noise. The fans sound like a laptop when the laptop is doing work. When the system's under load, you hear like the regular, like two fans, blower style fans spinning, and there's an axial fan which you don't actually hear. But that's pretty much it. It's really, really good. So let me see. There was one thing. Oh yeah, the next thing. Let me see. GPD Win. What is that thing called? GPD Win 5? Yeah, this thing. All right, this is the last thing we're going to talk about. on this episode of Tech Thursdays, and this is the handheld market. So somebody brought this to my attention. I think it was either last week or a few weeks ago. Someone mentioned that they're actually starting to make like gaming handhelds that are using Strix Halo. Strix Halo in a gaming handheld is kind of crazy. Like when you think about it, because it's like, whoa, you're gonna put this type of hardware. I realize now that most of these are probably going to feature the cut down, not really cut down, but the ones that have less RAM. So instead of the flagship 128 gigabyte RAM, these are probably going to come with the 64 gigabyte RAM or the 32 gigabyte RAM. I think the 64 gig model might be a good choice for a gaming handheld because with 64 gigs of RAM, first of all, it doesn't have to be as expensive as the full 128 gig Strix Halo, but it's also going to have less. So that basically means that your price up front is going to be less because you're not paying for all that extra RAM. And also, you're still getting the DDR5 8 or LPDDR5 8000 speed. And it's going to be like, I don't know, 64 gigs, which means you could do 32 gig VRAM, 32 gig system RAM, or you could do something like you could do 16 gig VRAM, the rest goes to system RAM if you want it. I mean, the nice thing about it is it's customizable. That's what's so cool about this platform, because it's like, oh, you could do 50-50. Like, out of the box, this mini PC, the GMK Tech, this thing was 64 gigs system RAM and 64 gigs of VRAM for AI. Yeah, the power limit on this is probably going to be a lot lower. I feel like they're probably going to do 45 watt TDP or something on here. So basically the equivalent of silent mode on my mini PC. And it won't perform as good as, obviously, the one that's running at 120 watts. But the fact that they're actually doing it is what's crazy. Like, they're actually building this type of stuff. Like, GPD Win 5. I can't help but think that this literally looks like a PSP. It looks like a giant PSP. And the thing is, there's so many of these that have been announced recently. It's crazy that they're doing this. Like, I'm not a huge fan of all these. I want to see, like, how... Okay, let's put it this way. I was interested in the Xbox Ally X up until I found out about this. When I found out about this, I was like, okay, now I actually am not that interested in Xbox Ally X at all. Because this is far more interesting. I was not really super interested in Steam Deck, mainly because Steam Deck was Linux-based, and if you want to run Windows-based games on a handheld, like, for example, Genshin Impact, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get that to run on a Steam Deck, whereas if you have an Xbox Ally, you can just straight up install Genshin Impact, and it works because you're installing it on essentially Windows. I would imagine the GPD Win 5, this being Strix Halo x86 based, is the same thing. Like, they're probably pre-installing this with some form of Windows. It's going to effectively be something like an ROG Ally. It's just with Strix Halo inside. So the fact that they're doing like full up to 128 gigs, I'm like, man, 128 gigs at 8,000 in a handheld? Like, what? Like, okay. That's very interesting, but I think it's super overkill. I don't know who exactly this is for. If anything, this is more of like a proof of concept to show that it's actually possible to build this sort of product. But I really don't know who the target audience is. I guess maybe extreme tech enthusiasts will be interested in this, but why not get a laptop? I don't know. Like, it's kind of weird. But interesting that it exists, though. So props to the fact that they actually went and built something like it. It's all about what's possible with Strix Halo. So that's what's cool about all of this. What type of screen are they using? I don't know. I hope it's not OLED. I don't know. It's probably not OLED, though. If it's not OLED, it's actually better. If it's not OLED, that means it has better battery life. and no PWM flicker when you lower the brightness. So a lot of people don't realize that if you have an OLED screen and you lower the brightness to save on battery, you could end up getting headaches and migraines if you're sensitive to PWM flicker. So I personally don't want these sort of devices to be OLED. That's the main reason why I never bought a Nintendo Switch OLED, because of PWM flicker. But the Switch 2, thankfully, is not using an OLED, so it doesn't have that problem. Lenovo Legion Go 2 has OLED. Yeah, to me that's a deal breaker. Like, I wouldn't buy any of those things with OLED. OLED is, in my opinion, OLED is only good on a big monitor. Like, on a TV, or like for a home theater system, they're great for that. That's like actually the best use case for them, in my opinion. And then they're also really good as a high-end gaming monitor for a desktop setup or a docking station setup using USB 4. That's what OLED is for, in my opinion. I don't want a laptop. I mean, one of the reasons why I chose the laptop that I chose, the ThinkPad P16S, is because you can still thankfully get a really good 100% sRGB color gamut on a standard IPS panel. I did not want an OLED panel on a laptop. So that's the reason why I don't care about any of those gaming laptops. Those things are all invisible to me, because all of them are, especially the Lenovo Legion ones, they're all OLED. And I'm like, no thanks. No, you're not going to see it flicker. Your eyes don't notice it, but it will happen to your eyes. So basically, if you want to experience it, set your OLED screen to minimum brightness level, and then try to read articles on your screen for a while. You're going to start getting eye fatigue. You got to set your OLED to a lower bright. You cannot run your OLED at 100. I think at 90, 80, 85, 90% brightness is not an issue. But if you want to get, if you're someone like me who never runs your mobile device at 100% brightness, OLED is a no-go. That is a complete deal breaker. Phones use AMOLED. Yeah, my phone is an OLED, and I don't really have too much of a problem with it. But see, the thing is, usually with your phone's brightness is typically at like 70%. Unless you're in like a, I don't know, like if you're in like a really dark room and you have it on auto brightness, it might lower it down to like 40% or something. But typically the phone brightness level doesn't get low enough for it to be a problem. So, meaning you have to go out of your way, if you're on a phone, to experience the brightness problem. But laptop, we're talking like you're working on the laptop, you're reading stuff, you're typing things, you're doing things, you're focused, your eyes are focusing on the screen a lot for an extended period of time. So if you run the OLED screen on the laptop down at like 20% brightness, for example, 15% brightness, 30% brightness. Basically, if it's like 1/3 or lower, you're gonna notice the problem. You won't see it flicker. It's not that. It's happening so fast that you physically can't see it. But what you can do, take a camera, put like a camera in, I think you have to have it in video mode. Like look at your computer screen, the OLED screen, through a camera set to video, and you lower the brightness on the OLED, you will see it. You can physically see it through the camera's lens. Yeah, but you're talking about the OLEDs lowering for color reasons. I'm talking about physically adjusting the backlight down, like on a laptop screen. Run your laptop at 15% brightness if it's an OLED screen, and then use it for a while, for like use the laptop for like I don't know, like read something or something with it for a while, and you'll notice it. I mean, some people aren't sensitive to it, but the thing is, I think anyone, if they use it long enough, because I'm not immediately sensitive to PWM flicker. Like I have to use the OLED at low brightness for probably like 2 to 3 hours before I notice the problem. For I'll start getting a headache. I'll just start getting a headache. Like, and I know that it's because of the PWM flicker happening. What brand of yellow? No, these are just straight. These are just basic computer glasses. They filter out the blue light from the screens. This has nothing to do with PWM flicker. This doesn't fix PWM flicker. Battery life. How do you think I get full day battery life on these laptops? I barely charge these laptops. Like this laptop right here, this thing's been on battery for like 2.5 days. I need to charge it. It's like at, I think, 29% battery or something. The charger isn't even in this room, so I have to go find the charger. I mean, that's the reason why I couldn't use a Switch 2 or a Switch 1 OLED for that reason. Because if I'm gonna be playing on a handheld, I gotta lower the brightness, man. I gotta max the battery life. I run the Switch battery life at the screen brightness at like 25%, at most 40%. I mean, that's how you get good battery life. If the thing has bad battery life, you run the brightness low and it's going to have good battery life. What glasses do you recommend for blue light reduction? So these glasses, I can't even tell you what these glasses brand is, because for those that don't know, these glasses I got from Fry's Electronics a long time ago. So, and Fry's isn't even in business anymore. At least I think they're still around in California in like a few places, but they're basically gone from the market. And I bought these from Fry's Electronics maybe like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and so I can't tell you the brand. Like there's no brand on them. I don't know what they are anymore. Just look up like blue light computer glasses, and if the design looks like this, it's probably the same one. But yeah, I don't know the brand because I've had these forever and I don't know. Would you rather get Zen 6 at 7 gigahertz? It's not gonna be 7 gigahertz. 6 gigahertz with a CU. It's gonna be neither one of those. Well, I don't know about the 6. It could be 6 gigahertz. Definitely not 7 though. I think it's gonna be like 5 something gigahertz. Do you set the screen for night dim during the day? I do not. No. Like even right now, I'm using the screens normal, like as I normally do. On the laptop, I do have it set to like at 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. The laptop in Windows will switch over to what is it called, night light. It'll do the night light thing where it like reduces the chroma on the blue. I do on the laptop. I don't do that on my desktop monitors though. I don't even bother with that on desktop. Yeah, it's perfectly safe. The only problem is I don't know. Like the thing about wearing blue light filtering glasses all the time, even as a prescription lens, I want to say that I wouldn't be surprised if. Now, I don't know. I'm not an expert on this by any means, but I would think that if you constantly filter out the blue light from using glasses, you're going to build a dependency on that. Meaning, if you were then to remove your blue light filtering lenses, your eyes might become even more sensitive to blue light. I don't know. Like I could be wrong in that regard, but I want to say that if you wear blue light filtering lenses all the time due to prescription lenses, you may become dependent on that. Meaning, if you were to remove those glasses or switch to glasses that do not have the blue light filtering, your eyes are going to be more sensitive to the effects of blue light rather than less sensitive. So I don't know. I could be completely wrong in that assumption. I am not a doctor by any means, so like an optometrist or anything. So I don't know. I could just be completely stating irrelevant things on that. But that's my kind of like intuitive understanding, if you will, is that if you rely so much on something, your body will become more dependent on it rather than being more able to adjust or be more flexible. You just use anti-reflective. Well, I mean, the blue light filter on your glasses was a headache maker for me. Really? See, that's what I'm thinking though, because if you're always filtering out the blue light, then when you stop using the glasses, now you're getting the blue light radiation. Now the eyes are probably more sensitive to the blue light because they're not always interacting with it, or they're not receiving it all the time. So you know what I mean? So I don't know. Like, I'm definitely not an expert on this. But anyway, that is Strix Halo in depth and kind of a look at what to expect with Zen 6 next year. So really interesting stuff. Like I told you guys, it's every 2 years. Last year was Zen 5. Next year is Zen 6. So we had Zen 5 in 2024. We had Zen 4 in 2022. We had Zen 3 in 2020. So every 24 months or so, you can expect the next generation of CPU and GPU. That is also true for GPU. So you don't really need to rely on leaks or anything like that. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't have to like look up leaks on hardware. I mean, it's entertaining content, if anything, but and sometimes it's also semi-accurate too in terms of what the leaked info says. I haven't looked at any leaks in a long time, but I understand that 24 months, man. It's every 24 months. So Zen 5 was August of last year. So I expect sometime, it doesn't have to be exactly on the dot, but sometime between the end of July of next year and the end of October next year, I expect Zen 6 on desktop will show up sometime in that window. So sometime in the second half of Q3 or the very beginning of Q4, that is when I expect to see Zen 6 show up. So we'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm right. AMD's either going to prove me right or they're going to prove me wrong. If they prove me wrong, they're probably going to prove me wrong by like 1 month. It's like they might do November or whatever. But anyway, it's definitely coming next year. I can pretty much guarantee that, even though I have no insider knowledge into their roadmap. Do you think DDR5 8000 is better? Oh, it's definitely better than 6000. The problem is you can't really do it in high capacity, and you have to have a very good motherboard for all the reasons that we talked about the first half of the stream. I have tested both. 8000 is definitely better. But okay. A couple of things. I guess that'll be the last thing we do on the stream is talk about RAM, because we always seem to talk about RAM. Someone always brings up RAM, which is totally fine. So let's do DDR5 6000 versus DDR5 8000. Someone asked about that during the Monster Hunter live stream a few days ago. And maybe it was during the Trails in the Sky, which feels like that was a while ago. It's only been like Not even a week yet. Wow. Okay, so DDR5 6000 versus DDR5 8000. DDR5 8000 is better performance-wise. It's better. It is straight up better. It is better performance-wise. It has true synchronization. Meaning Infinity Fabric equals MCLK. So your FCLK equals MCLK when you're running DDR5 8000. This is not true, or not always the case. Actually, no, this is totally not true when you're running DDR5 6000. So it has true synchronization. More memory bandwidth from the DRAM, from the sheer fact that the DRAM is literally running 1 gigahertz. DRAM is 1 gigahertz faster than DDR5 6000. These are all objective facts. None of these things are inaccurate statements. All this is 100% fact. You cannot debate this. These are, well, some benchmarks might not show much of a performance increase, but in general, all these statements are true. Oh, thank you for correcting me. Yeah, that's correct. That's a really... I definitely need to correct that. Yes, you're correct. FCLK equals UCLK. That is correct. Wait. Yeah, you're right. Yes, that's correct. So yes, this is true synchronization. Memory controller and fabric run the same exact speed. Okay. What is better about... Okay. These are the pros. Pros. And then down here is the cons. What are the bad things about DDR5 8000? What are the negative things about it? Limited to 48 gigabyte on desktop. So unless you're on Strix Halo, you're not going to be getting very high amounts of RAM. You are stuck at 48 gigs max today. If you want to run DDR5 8000, you're limited to 2 sticks, 24 gigs each, for a total of 48 gigs. So you're limited to 48 gig capacity, unless you're on Strix Halo, but we're not talking about Strix Halo. The other thing is cost. More expensive per gig. So it costs more money. Because it's higher performance, it's going to cost more money. Voltage, it's not necessarily any different in voltage than DDR5 6000. So the voltages are going to come down to things like cast latency. Those are usually what impacts or determines what the voltages are. Also the binning, the type of memory, the memory manufacturer. Those are the sort of things that will determine the voltage. So I wouldn't say voltage is a negative. Definitely not for 8000. If anything, the voltage on 8000 might be a good thing, considering how fast it is. But no, that's not really part of this. No 4 sticks. Yeah, that's bad. The latency is not higher. It's not higher. Latency doesn't really change. We've tested this. Because the latency is, you're increasing your memory bandwidth, but you can scale back your latency by doing things like TREFI and stuff like that. So really, latency is not a negative. Have you gotten 84 to work on AM5? I have not tested 8400 on AM5, at least not recently. And there isn't really a reason to do that. So let's say, another thing I will say, DDR5 8000 is the magic number from a synchronization standpoint. So going to something like 8400 is, for all intents and purposes, useless or impractical or doesn't have any benefit. So there's no reason to even attempt 8400. So that is to say that I have no interest in 8400 because there is no practical benefit to running the memory at that speed versus running it at 8,000. 8,000 is what I can tell you is 8,000 is significantly easier to get running stable versus 8,400, and it has true synchronization where 8,400 does not have true synchronization. So there really is no reason to even consider 8,400 for any of these platforms. That includes Intel's platforms. I have tried 8,200 on Intel on Arrow Lake, and it doesn't work. It might work if I have like active cooling on the RAM all the time with a fan blazing fast and loud. Maybe it'll work in that scenario, but that to me is impractical, and I'm all about practicality. I want to run a system 24/7 stable and not have to think about, oh, is the game going to crash while I'm live streaming? Because that's a no-go, right? Like that's a no. We're not doing that. So all my systems have always worked 100% stable all the time. We've been using we've tested DDR5 8000 for like months. We've done DDR5 6000. I have not actually ran DDR5 6000 in a long time on any of my platforms. Today I can tell you that I'm running 6400 or I'm running 8000. If I'm doing high speed, low capacity, I do 8000. If I'm doing high capacity on single rank, 4 sticks, I do 6400. That is actually what I run on the Godlike today. Well, no 4 sticks is basically limited to 48 gigabytes. So I want to think, there was something else I was thinking about. More expensive, limited to 48. Oh. Requires high-end motherboard. You cannot do this on a cheap motherboard. It will not work. Because of what we talked about earlier on in the stream with signal integrity of the wires. If the motherboard is low layer, high loss, low quality trace layout, guess what? 8000 ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work on a low-end motherboard. So it requires an expensive high-end motherboard. So the main problem with DDR5 8000 is literally these 3 things. Low capacity, expensive, the cost per gigabyte, and it's even more expensive when you consider the fact that you have to spend more money on the motherboard. So straight up cost and capacity is what makes it bad. But it is objectively better. It has true synchronization. It will outperform DDR5 6000. I have an entire video showing benchmark comparisons between 6000 and 8000 in an apples-to-apples comparison. None of this nonsense where it's like, oh, we're going to run this thing at like cache latency 28. No, that's not how you do a proper comparison. You do like CL30 or CL32 versus CL40. That is how you compare apples to apples. Okay, because we're running voltages at 1.35 volts. You're not going to be doing DDR5 6000 CL28 at 1.35 volts. You're going to be at like 1.4, 1.45. Likewise, DDR5 8000 CL40, we're doing that at 1.35. We're not doing some stupid cache latency 38, 1.45 volt nonsense. No. We're not about to burn up that memory controller and cause that thing to fry in like less than 2 years. No. So, this is what I do. It's all about practicality and long-term scalability. And the system has to be reliable. Okay, so pros, DDR5 6000. High capacity options. So you got your dual rank. Dual rank DIMMs. You don't have dual rank DIMMs, at least not in 2025. There are no such thing as dual rank DDR5 8000 DIMMs. But they are on 6000. Just say dual rank. So you have dual rank. Cheaper per gigabyte. So basically the complete opposite. Works on every motherboard. Even the lowest end $50 motherboard can do DDR5 6000. but it cannot do 8,000. So those are the good things about it. So basically the complete opposite of DDR5 8000 from the cons. What are the bad things about it? I mean, the bad things about it are going to be the opposite of this. Lower performance. No synchronization. It's asynchronous. Basically, we'll say asynchronous timing. And then lower, it's basically the exact opposite of the other one. Lower memory bandwidth. All right. Pro for season giveaway. Yeah. Cam have more. Cam is completely different because that is a laptop thing, and that is also, so that's for the mobile space. I mean, it could, in theory, be used on desktop, but I would only ever expect to see that in a mini PC, like a pre-built mini PC. And Cam is a CKD technology. So next year, you will see Cam show up on desktop, but it's not going to be Cam as you know it. It's going to be something called QDIMM, which we've already talked about on this channel. QDIMM equals Cam. These are the same exact thing. The difference is Cam equals laptop. QDIMM equals desktop. So if you're interested in Cam, you need to look into QDIMMs if you're someone who wants to build a desktop, because QDIMM is Cam and they both use clock redrivers, and we will see QDIMM with Zen 6 next year. So we talked about this already. I already have QDIMMs. We have a whole video. We did QDIMM on AMD. We did QDIMM on Intel. Today, QDIMM only actually works the way it's meant to on Intel's Core Ultra platform. This is the reason why, if you look at the new laptops on the market today, some, not all, but some of the thin and light, the Ultrabook form factor laptops featuring Intel's Arrow Lake H and maybe Arrow Lake HX, but not really Arrow Lake HX. That's going to be SODIMM. So Arrow Lake H, which is basically the competitor to AMD's Strix Point CPUs. Not Strix Halo. Nothing that Intel has comes anywhere close to competing with Strix Halo, because that is a completely different thing altogether. That is basically a Super Saiyan 3. Intel today does not have a Super Saiyan 3. Okay? Strix Halo is AMD going Super Saiyan 3. Intel is basically Vegeta, in that Intel can only do Super Saiyan 2. However, Intel has the QDIMM technique. They can already do QDIMM technology. And that is why in some laptops featuring Arrow Lake H, you will find CAM modules on Arrow Lake laptops. So Intel is on the front bleeding edge of technology when it comes to the memory, because they already have CAM and QDIMM. QDIMM on desktop. We already have a whole video about that, so if you want to see QDIMM, go watch the video. And then CAM on laptop in the Arrow Lake H series laptops. So, from my point of view, Intel is poised to take what little market share AMD was gaining in the mobile space. I don't think Intel's going to have a huge impact, but Intel has pretty much maintained their lead in the mobile CPU market share for a very long time. And the fact that they have CAM technology now, and it's like AMD doesn't even have that. AMD has like soldered LPDDR5X or traditional SODIMM. At least in thin and lights, Intel it has the technology advantage on the memory side today. Although LPDDR5X, that's pretty fast. LPDDR5X is pushing DDR5 8000 speeds on 128 gig capacity. So that's nothing to scoff at. But anyway, that's stuff you'll see with Zen 6 next year. Oh no, it's definitely going to support QDIMM. Without even knowing for a fact, I can tell you it will support QDIMM. Is Arrow Lake underrated by reviewers? As someone who has and uses Arrow Lake, I actually like Arrow Lake. I actually really like Arrow Lake. I'll tell you what I don't like. Okay, 13th gen and 14th gen are utter garbage in my opinion. Those things ran really, really hot, used a ton of electricity for how small they were, and just kind of like burn themselves out. And that's the reason why Intel had those issues with the CPUs dying in droves last year with the 13900K in particular and the 14900K, because they were ramping up the voltages too much on the load line and they were kind of burning up the ring bus. And so to me personally, Arrow Lake is definitely the safer bet. Like if I was going to go Intel, I wouldn't even consider 14th gen. Like, first of all, 14th gen is like 2 years old. So it's like, you want to buy a 1-year-old Arrow Lake or a 2-year-old Raptor Lake refresh? It's like, it's pretty cut and dry simple. Arrow Lake has built-in Thunderbolt 4 standard equipment, just like how AMD has USB 4. They're basically the same exact thing. So it's got platform parity with AMD. It's from that standpoint. 13th gen, 14th gen didn't even have Thunderbolt, guys. Like, you couldn't even do, like, okay, if you wanted Thunderbolt on 14th gen, you had to buy an add-in card, which means you had to have a motherboard that had a dedicated X4 slot. Otherwise, forget it. You don't even have Thunderbolt, despite the fact that you're on an Intel platform. So, Arrow Lake, all the Z8, not all of them, but like most Z890 motherboards, all have Thunderbolt 4 support, standard. Wi-Fi 7, just like X870E, basically the same thing. So, like, if I was going to go Intel, I would completely ignore Raptor Lake, even though it's heavily discounted now, and you can actually get some pretty good deals on it. But if you live near a Micro Center, Arrow Lake Micro Center has a pretty good Arrow Lake bundle with the Core Ultra 7 265K in particular. But the problem is, if you're a gamer, right now, there is really no reason to buy Intel. Like, legit, there's no reason to buy Intel, because they're just not, they're not good. I mean, they're not terrible. Like, we're not talking like Intel's, so awful that you should ignore them completely. But if you're a gamer, X3D, man, it's so simple. Like, I'm someone who, I literally have access to literally all the CPUs. I've tested normal Zen 5. I've tested X3D Zen 5. Obviously, Core Ultra. We got 13th gen somewhere over there in the back. I mean, I've got all the old Zen 4, Zen 3, etc. 12th gen Intel, all those things. 11th gen Intel. And I can tell you personally, this is my like unfiltered opinion on like all of them. So for productivity, it's kind of split 50-50. Like, you could go like AMD, you could go Intel. They're going to have very similar multi-core performance. You would never be able to tell the difference in multi-thread performance. Some of them, AMD is going to do better, especially if you're doing things that are dealing with cryptography. Like if you're doing a lot of like file compression, file decompression, any sort of like AES encryption, any of those sort of things. AMD destroys Intel in those benchmarks, and that is the reason back when everyone was doing CPU mining, if you guys remember the crypto bros, making every gamer's life a nightmare when it came to buying GPUs a few years ago. Back when people were mining crypto on CPUs, guess what? All the crypto bros were using Ryzen. No one was using Intel to mine crypto because of the cryptography performance on Ryzen. It is insanely good. The other thing too, AVX 512. If you need, or if you run apps that leverage AVX 512 applications or instruction sets, Ryzen 100%. Zen 5 100%. Get that. Forget about Intel if you're doing anything with AVX 512, because Intel doesn't even support AVX 512. The last Intel CPU, well, okay, you can do AVX 512 if you're on Intel Xeon, but if you're going to compare apples to apples, you better be looking at a Threadripper if you're considering a Xeon, because that's the only way to look at them objectively. Otherwise, if you're on a regular desktop, and if you're doing anything with AVX 512, Zen 5 AMD is literally the only option. It's literally the only option. AMD literally is the only player in that space today. I don't know why Intel got rid of that. They went out of their way to literally fuse off from the factory the chunk of silicon on 12th gen Alder Lake that could actually do AVX 512. No idea why they did that, but they did that. I actually have a i7-12700K from the launch of Alder Lake back in 2021 that actually can do AVX 512. And that is the last Intel CPU, consumer CPU, that can do AVX 512, and I've got one. So I'm holding on to that thing, man, until Intel brings back AVX 512 or whatever. But yeah, Zen 5, that's the way to go if you need those features. Now, in favor of Intel, though, Intel has a couple of tricks up their sleeve.
People say Ghost of Yote is more of the same thing, but that's actually a good thing to me. Too many great IPs have been destroyed by developers. It is actually good that something stays the same.
Well, I heard that the game is more, it's kind of like Death Stranding 2, in the sense that the first Ghost of Tsushima had the whole build-up, but the Ghost of Yote story, it's more of like a revenge plot. Well, actually both, Ghost of Tsushima and Yote are both revenge stories. But I think Yote has a more interesting reason for the... well, I shouldn't say that, because the Mongols, like, the Japanese defending, like, basically defending Shima from the Mongol invaders was a very interesting story. I actually kind of like that story because of that. The whole, like, oh, we're being invaded and we're trying to, like, prevent them from taking over, that kind of thing. I thought that was actually a pretty good story. But Yote is definitely more of your traditional revenge plot. I haven't played it yet, so I don't know. But I've seen some of the reviews for it, and it's pretty good from what I've seen. Another Decima engine, man. Decima games run and look fantastic and very well optimized. So I will be playing it at some point on PS5 Pro. I just have to clear Omega Savage. Omega Savage is literally delaying me from... it's basically hard blocking me from trying any of the other newer games. I have not touched Tactics. I probably won't even touch Yote until I have to clear Omega Savage at least one time before I can play any of these newer games. But real quick, just to answer the question on the whole, I think we should have used Paint to draw the difference, but in favor of Intel, what does Intel have that AMD doesn't have? Number one, on desktop, if you're comparing apples to apples, so if you're doing Ryzen 9 versus Intel Core Ultra 9, Intel has AV1 encoding. Their built-in integrated media engine has AV1 encoding. So you don't need a fancy NVIDIA GPU or an AMD GPU or even an Intel GPU if you just want to use Intel's Quick Sync and leverage AV1. So if you're someone who's doing anything with AV1, or if you're an AV1 enthusiast, Arrow Lake already has AV1. Now, AMD does have AV1 on like an 8700G. Strix Halo has AV1 encoding. We're literally encoding this stream right now in AV1 on Strix Halo. But the desktop Zen 5 CPUs do not have AV1 encoding today. That is probably their biggest flaw that I can immediately point out when it comes to stuff that Intel has that AMD doesn't have. The other thing that Intel does support, although it's very expensive, is Thunderbolt 5. You can do Thunderbolt 5 on Arrow Lake. However, it is not integrated. Intel Arrow Lake only supports Thunderbolt 4 as standard equipment, meaning the CPU literally has dedicated silicon for the Thunderbolt 4, aka USB 4 version 1.0 on the die. We probably should do a comparison table here, but because I'm trying to remember all these things. However, if you want Thunderbolt 5, there are some Intel Z890 boards like the Z890 ROG Maximus Extreme from Asus that come with Thunderbolt 5 included on the motherboard. The way they do this is by literally soldering the Intel JHL 9580 Thunderbolt 5 controller on the board. That is the only way you're going to get Thunderbolt 5. The other way is to buy a separate add-in card that uses PCIe Gen 4, 4 lanes, and I have an entire video about this. So if you're interested in Thunderbolt 5, go watch my video on Thunderbolt 5. We've already covered all of this with Arrow Lake, featuring a Z890 Maximus Hero from Asus. So I already have all the content on what I'm talking about. So basically, AV1, Thunderbolt 5, those are the things that Arrow Lake has that you cannot do on Zen 5. But Zen 5 has AVX 512, it has superior cryptography performance, and it has better gaming performance if you're on an X3D. Now, if we're not talking X3D, if you're just talking standard Ryzen, no X3D, like a 95 or a 9950X, which I have right here, this thing versus the Core Ultra is definitely a more interesting battle because personally, if you're doing anything with gaming, forget about the Intel advantages. Like, who cares about Thunderbolt 5? Because nothing really uses Thunderbolt 5 today that can benefit from it. And by the time Thunderbolt 5 becomes relevant, every new modern platform will have Thunderbolt 5 or USB 4 2.0 support. So, you know, like, it's one of those, like, early adopter things at this point. But if you do anything with gaming, just straight up X3D. That's my top recommendation. If you're doing productivity and you don't care about X3D, although I don't know why you wouldn't consider this X3D CPU, then it's kind of more back and forth. You got AVX 512. You have consistent multi-thread performance because you have all 16 P cores and all of them have hyper-threading, aka SMT. So you're going to have your full 32 threads. Here you have a hybrid. You've got 8 P cores with no hyper-threading, so it's just 8 threads. Then you have 16 E cores, which are way better than the ones on 14th gen. So you have pretty comparable multi-thread performance between your flagship Ryzen 9 and your flagship Core Ultra. So they're basically the same performance-wise. And then in gaming performance, Arrow Lake and Zen 5 are so similar in gaming that you will never be able to tell the difference between the two of them. So, unless you go X3D, or if you don't care about gaming, AMD and Intel are basically the same. And I'm saying this as someone who literally has tested and used both platforms as daily drivers for like weeks and weeks at this point. I mean, I've had these CPUs. I've had this since its launch back in October of last year. So I've almost had my Core Ultra for an entire year. And then I've had this since like August of last year. So it's been like 14 months with Zen 5 at this point. And yeah, they're basically the same performance-wise. In a blind test, you'll never be able to tell the difference. But if we're talking gaming, man, X3D blows both of them out of the water. It's like way better. What happened with that dual X3D? The dual X3D, what are you talking about? It's right here. Dual X3D. 9950 X3D. This is the Ryzen 9. This is the flagship. We have that CPU. That's in our Godlike. The X870E Godlike has my 9950 X3D. Oh, you're talking about dual X3D. Oh, there's no such thing. There's no such thing. You're talking about a product that doesn't exist. Maybe it existed somewhere at some point as an engineering sample, or maybe AMD has one internally. I'm pretty sure they have one internally, but that's not an actual product. Why? Were you expecting that to be a product? I mean, I told you guys that wasn't going to be a product. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I think that pretty much covers it. So, a lot of interesting stuff to look forward to next year with Zen 6. I mean, I'll tell you, after looking at Strix Halo in depth, and I've been using it all week as my daily driver, it is fantastic as a mini PC. And like I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of mini PCs. I like my big giant desktops with the high-end GPUs in them. But man, this thing, I am impressed. I normally am not impressed by mini PCs at all. But this is definitely something else. If you're trying to get into AI, like if you want to do anything with AI, on-prem, meaning you're not running like Chat GPT in the cloud somewhere or whatever and sending all your data to some AI company to just steal all your ideas and train their models. No, if you want to do AI on-prem, like off the network, locally on your computer, this platform is a great starter kit to do that, because the amount of VRAM you can do on this for the money is fantastic. Because like we were talking I think it was like a couple of weeks ago about the RTX Pro 6000 and the RTX Pro 6000 Max Q from PNY. Man, those things are like $8,000 to $9,000. That's almost 10 grand for a GPU just for AI. Like, unless you're a company that has a lot of like angel investor capital or something or whatever, like there's no way to justify that if you just want to play around with AI, with larger AI models that actually are legit good at responding with fast response time. Strix Halo is 100% the cheapest way to go. So we may cover some of that in future content if you guys are truly interested in AI, but I've done a couple of videos on AI in the past, and the view counts on them were never really that good. So I don't know if I'll do that. I might do it anyway, just because. But yeah, if you're at least remotely interested in AI, where you need to do AI inferencing with a large parameter, like we're talking like multi-billion parameter model, Strix Halo, 100%. That's what I recommend. Really, really good platform for that. I mean, the cost savings alone are insane because of the amount of VRAM. Because you can do that 96 gigs of VRAM for under $2,000. Like, there's no way to do that on any other platform today. Yeah, one thing that we haven't seen with... so what we don't know about Zen 6 is we don't know what the chipset lane count will be for the new motherboards. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if Zen 6 is on a new socket. If it's on AM5, then... I don't know, man. I kind of think AM5 is going to hold back the platform from being able to deliver on a lot of next-gen features like USB 4 2.0, aka Thunderbolt 5, and... well, although they might just do that as an add-in card like they did with Zen 4, because that's what Intel's doing. I don't think Intel's going to put Thunderbolt 5 on the Nova Lake. I think it's still going to be Thunderbolt 4, and if you want Thunderbolt 5, you got to go add-in card. So I think AMD might do that. They'll have like an ASMedia or whoever with a USB 4 2.0, which is Thunderbolt 5 compatible. So they'll do something. I expect to see that next year. However, the thing is, if the lane count doesn't change, I think they're going to look bad compared to Intel, at least from a platform standpoint. Because I know Intel's going to do a new socket next year. And I think if AMD wants to stay competitive with Intel, they kind of need to do a new socket. They don't have to, but I think they should. Now, I think that the tech press will probably kind of frown upon that. But at the end of the day, man, you got to have the high numbers. You got to have the benchmarks, right? So if your socket's going to hold you back, then you got to go new socket. So I don't know. I kind of think they need to do. I mean, it would be really cool if it's backwards compatible, like if it's still AM5 and they do a brand new chipset, which means there'll be brand new motherboards. That will be acceptable. But the thing is, they need a new chipset. They definitely need a new chipset. I mean, we've been stuck on, what, 24 lanes Gen 5 and 12 lanes Gen 4 and 8 lanes Gen 3 for 3 years now. That's still a decent amount of lanes, but Intel's got 4 more lanes, and Intel's SATA doesn't take from PCIe lanes. So technically, Intel's got more lanes. Z890 has 4 more lanes than X870E. So the highest end AMD X870E still has 4 less lanes than Intel's Z890. X870E has the same amount of lanes. Actually, yeah, has the same amount of lanes as the Z790, the old Raptor Lake stuff. And that's because it's the same age. Fundamentally, the chipset is the same age as Intel's older Z890 or Z790, I should say. So that's the reason why I think they definitely need a new chipset, and they possibly need a new socket if they need to handle the sea of wires with like some new socket, then so be it. You got to do what you got to do, man, at the end of the day to bring the performance up. If I'm okay with them changing sockets if they're going to give us this massive performance leap. So I'm not one of those. It's like, okay, yeah, AM4 was really cool. It had a bunch of CPU generations all in the same socket. That's fantastic. I mean, they could still do AM5 with Zen 6, because you think about, okay, Zen 1 was AM4, it was not chiplet. Zen 2 was AM4, it was chiplet. Zen 3 was also chiplet, and it was still AM4. And Zen 2 and Zen 3 had PCI Gen 4. Zen 1 did not. X370 did not have Gen 4. So, like, if you were someone who bought Zen 1 with X370 back in 2017, you could literally go all the way to a 5800X 3D that came out in early 2022. So you could do that. And that's amazing. That's great that you could do that. But you also did not get PCI Gen 4. You did not get the newer PCIe lanes that they had on X570. So you're missing out on a bunch of stuff. You also didn't get the better memory topology, the daisy chain topology that allowed you to run like a bunch of RAM at DDR5 3200, DDR5 3600, or not DDR5, DDR4 3200, DDR4 3600. You couldn't do a lot of that with an old X370 board. So yeah, it's cool that you can do all those CPUs on an old socket, but you got to remember that there's an opportunity cost with doing that. Like you're not getting the full potential out of that CPU's capabilities, but you're still benefiting from the IPC, the 3D V cache, all that stuff. You're getting the performance uplift, but you're not getting the platform uplift, is what I'm trying to say. So if AMD needs to, by all means, bring a new socket if that's what's needed to bring us a new next generation platform. Because I can pretty much guarantee Intel next year, I think it's Nova Lake. I think that's the one that they're going to use. Next year, Intel's Nova Lake is definitely going to be on a new socket. It's definitely going to be on a new chipset. Everything new, all that stuff, next gen. So Intel's also is going to be quite interesting next year to see what they do. Because Arrow Lake was kind of a flop. Platform-wise, it's totally fine. But it's not as good in gaming. It doesn't have AVX 512. I mean, it's technically, it's more energy efficient than AMD if you lower the power. If you drop the power, Intel's more efficient. In the mobile space, this is true. because Fire Range is basically desktop AMD competing with a mobile Intel. I kind of think Arrow Lake from the ground up was a mobile design. I said this last year when I evaluated the Core Ultra series when on desktop last year, because the integrated graphics in this was like, man, this is like having a laptop's integrated GPU on a desktop, which is quite good. But yeah, Intel is kind of, in my opinion, Intel, as an outsider looking at Intel, as a tech enthusiast, I see Intel as a company that has kind of lost their way to an extent, and they're trying to find themselves. And they tried to do all these things when Pat Gelsinger was there. So they spent all this money. They took all this government money. Oh, we're going to build these fabs. We're going to fix up our fabs. We're going to do this. We're going to do the Lunar Lake thing as a proof of concept. It's really cool. Oh, look, x86 can be energy efficient, just like Apple's ARM stuff. It's like, okay, that's cool, but it's like, it's not an enthusiast thing because it's capped at 32 gigs of soldered RAM, and it's not upgradable, and, you know, not really an enthusiast thing at the end of the day, but it's cool that they did it. Then they did the tile, aka chiplets, and all these interposer things to kind of match AMD. Then they went to TSMC because they weren't good with their nodes. So, there's a lot of like weird things with Intel right now. And then they changed CEOs, and they laid off all these people. Then the new guy laid off a bunch of other people. Then now he's laying off more people. And then they go and team up with Nvidia for AI customers. So, but that we won't see the fruits of that until like 3 years from now. So, yeah. Basically, I don't know exactly what Intel and Nvidia will do together for the consumer space. I think they're going to do something, but if I had to guess, it would be kind of like a Strix Halo thing, where it would have like an Nvidia GPU component in here, and then it would just have like Intel CCDs. I mean, that's basically what I think it'll be. But they're really doing that partnership for AI. It's mainly because the data center, the AI customers, they want x86 integrated into the AI model pipeline. That's basically what it is. That's why they're doing that. And they're going to get some other stuff out of it because of that. People who think Zen 7... Yeah, people who are saying that have no idea. Ignore those people. Anyone who says Zen 7 will be on AM5 are completely out of touch with reality. And actually, by saying something like that, they prove that they actually know nothing about how this technology works. I mean, it's like technically, AMD could put Zen 7 on AM5, but there's literally no reason. And remember what they said? They AMD committed to through 2025 is what they said initially, and then I think they said 2026 maybe at some point. I remember someone saying that somewhere, but that's basically it. So if Zen 6 is on AM5, then yeah, it's doable. I don't know if it's ideal, but anything beyond 2026 is definitely not going to be AM5. In fact, I still am not convinced that Zen 6 is guaranteed to be on AM5, but I could be wrong. I mean, just looking at Strix Halo, right? Like, will that AM5 socket with its pin count be able to handle the sea of wires? I mean, think about that for a second. Will it be able to do it? Now, technically, the sea of wires doesn't have anything to do with the underlying pins on the socket, because the sea of wires just goes from the CCD to the IO die. So technically, it could just be this pipeline of wires that just stays in the interposer and has nothing to do with the motherboard socket. So they could technically still do AM5 for that reason. What I'm saying is, at the very least, if they're going to stay on AM5, they need to change the chipset. They need to come out with a new chipset that is more than what you have on X870E today. They need, at least they need 4 more lanes. At the very least, they need 4 more lanes. If they can do all of that off of the same socket, then great. That's fantastic. AMD will still be making AM5 when Zen 7 happens. It will be their hedge. Well, yeah, I mean, look at Zen, 3 right now? You can literally go to a Micro Center today and go and buy a 5000 series CPU. You could buy a 5800 XT, 8-core, what is it, 8-core, 16-thread, single CCD, Zen 3 CPU, brand new today in the store. You can get one at Best Buy. They still got them. So it's like, yeah, and that's AM4 in 2025. You can still do. So yeah, the AM5 will still be around for a long time. But anything beyond Zen 6 is guaranteed to be a new socket. Guaranteed. I mean, I'll say it better be a new socket. It better not be AM5, Zen 7. Zen 7 is so far away, though. Zen 7 is late 2028. 2028, guys. So if you're talking about Zen 7, you're talking like 3 years from now. 3 years from now is the difference between a new CPU and a middle-aged CPU. That's a long time. What do you think of the AI? I mean, it's good. The only problem with it is they leave some lanes that they don't use. And I question why they needed dual 10 gig on the LAN. It's cool, but I don't know, like, I mean, we've talked about this motherboard a couple of times before. You're talking about Extreme AI Top from Gigabyte. So, what I remember about this board was this is basically the same as my X670E Aorus Master. The difference is this thing's got way more RGB, and it has the dual X8, if I remember correctly. This is X16, and then this one is X8, and when you plug something into this X8, this one drops to X8, so it shares the bandwidth, which is very good. I think, personally, the ability to run dual GPUs is more important now than having like a dedicated X4 slot for a internal capture card or something. Because with USB 4, you can just run an external capture card off of USB 4 if you need a capture card. For example, if you want to stream PlayStation 5 Pro or any of the consoles or dual PC, the external capture card is definitely the way to go these days if you know what you're doing versus the internal one. Because the external one, you can literally plug that in to every single device that has USB 4. Whereas with the internal one, you can only use it in desktop. It's a hassle. You got to open it up. You got to pull it out of the slot. It's just, no. It's not as flexible. And there's no difference in latency between, there's like almost no, it's like, we're talking like what, 2-3 milliseconds in the latency in terms of USB 4 versus the PCIe capture card. So I think if I remember correctly, it's X16, X8, and X8, and then an X2. I'm pretty sure that's X2 at the bottom. And it actually shares with the last M.2. And I remember Gigabyte had like 2 lanes that they weren't using at all, which was the reason why I didn't really like this motherboard for that reason. I don't like when board manufacturers waste PCIe lanes, especially on an expensive motherboard like this. The ASRock Taichi, is that cheap? Do you think Zen 6 flagship will be called that? I think it'll be called the 10950. Why would it be called 11? What's the 10 series? Where's the 10 series? Why would they skip the 10 and go straight to 11? Numerically, it should be called 10.9.50. Because they did 9, and then now they're doing 10, right? So it should be 10, not 11. Oh. I mean, I guess. I mean, my computer goes on the floor, though. All the random stuff hanging out the back of my computer is on the floor. It's on the floor down there, so I don't see any of it because it's under the desk in the back. So I guess it depends on your setup. The problem is if you're running a capture card inside, I mean, you can't really run a second graphics card unless you have a single, one of those really, really rare low-profile single-slot GPUs, like a Radeon Pro W7500, which I actually have in my Threadripper system as a second GPU. Because Threadripper doesn't have integrated graphics, I put that in there so it had integrated graphics. So it actually has really powerful integrated graphics. It's like, yeah, I'll use a single-slot dedicated GPU with no PCIe power connector for Threadripper so that it has integrated graphics now. Oh, you're right. They always skip. Yeah, well, for mainline, yeah, but no, technically they don't. They don't. There was an 8000. 8700G, guys. 8700G. They don't skip every number. Ryzen 7 8700G. 8000 series. But the even number is always the plus. It's the plus. This is Zen 4 Plus. Codename Phoenix. And usually the even numbered SKUs are their mobile platforms. The mobile platforms typically tend to be, that's not always true because Fire Range is 9,000 and Dragon Range was 7,000. But usually the even numbers are exclusively meant to be mobile parts. 8700G is basically Phoenix on desktop. It's like Phoenix in a desktop form factor on AM5. But this is effectively a mobile CPU. Actually, it's adapted because it has like, it works with the chipset. But again, there's a lot of limitations with it working on the desktop platform. There's stuff that it doesn't have access to. So, yeah. But they don't skip every number. So unless the 10,000 series is a mobile thing that replaces, well, but see, AMD redid their naming. So AI, like they're using that AI thing now. So they've got like, what, the Ryzen AI 9 HX370 and the Strix Halo, the Ryzen AI Max Plus 395. I mean, like, man, the names that they have for these things now are like, whoa. So, yeah, I don't know what it's going to be called. They could do 10,000 and then it is what it is. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of think it's going to be 10,000 though. Because they redid their naming convention for the laptops. So I guess they're going to do 10,000. I think it's going to be 10,000. Man, all my computers are on the floor. Except that mini PC. The mini PC is literally sitting on top of the tower. It's on top of the tower that's on the floor. So even if it had fan noise, it's so far away from me that I don't notice it. And the desktops are on carpeted floor. I got them on carpeted floors. Threadripper's not on the carpeted floor, but all the other ones are on carpeted floors. All the mainstream ones are stuck on carpeted floors, but Threadripper gets to be on a hardwood floor. So that power supply can suck in all that dust. All right, well, I guess that pretty much summarizes it. Oh, the question on that Tai Chi board. I mean, I don't know. What is this board again? X870E or X870E? Tai Chi Creator? Oh, it's X870. It's not X870E. I tend to prefer X870E. Well, I can tell you right now, I like that it has a postcode debug. I did not expect a postcode debug on an X870. So it has that. That's usually reserved for X870E. I like that it has 3 physical PCIe X16 slots. It has the button for the disconnect. It has the lever that doesn't scratch your GPU when you're trying to remove your GPU. Unlike Asus. So, I mean, I like that. It has 2 SATA, only 2 SATA, because like I said, it's X870, not X870, so you only get 2 SATA. You probably only have, how many? This might have 4 M.2. There's going to be some kind of lane sharing if they're doing 4 M.2. 5 gig LAN. Obviously, you have your USB 4, dual USB 4, 10 gig LAN. 10 gig LAN. And 5 gig LAN. Well, this automatically matches the godlike in terms of the LAN connectivity. The Wi-Fi 7 stuff, that's all standard on X870. It has how many M.2s does this thing have? Does it have 4? Okay, so the PCIe, it has whoa, this thing has X8 X8 and it has an X4? Gen 3 X4 at the bottom, which is fine. I mean, that can do Thunderbolt 4 add-in card. I mean, if it's supported on the BIOS. It has, looks like 4 M.2s. 1, 2, 3. It has 4 M.2s, but there's lane sharing because it's X870. I knew there was going to be lane sharing if they're going to do 4 M.2s. If it was X870E, there would be no lane sharing. But because it's X870, there's going to be lane sharing. Guaranteed. So, sure enough, this one is blazing. This one is also blazing. These gotta be sharing. Wait. Oh, no, that doesn't share. What is this? How does that work? How do you get 2 of these with the Thunderbolt? And then you have the Hyper, Gen 4. Blazing means Gen 5. Hyper means Gen 4. Ultra means Gen 3. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. ASRock vocabulary. Blazing equals Gen 5 SSD. Because they run so hot. They're hard to cool, so they're blazing. Hyper is Gen 4. Ultra, which sounds really good, is only Gen 3 apparently. So it's like Ultra. Wow, way to like discredit the impact of that word. Ultra only means Gen 3. So that's Gen 3 using as media. I really like that. Oh, no. That's telling us that. Oh, they have 4 SATA. Wait a minute, how come I only saw 2 of them? There's 2 right here. There's 1 here. Where's the other 3? They got 2 here? Where's the other 2? Oh, it's under this thing. Okay, they're there. Yeah, they're using splitters. So you can't do RAID. You cannot do RAID on this board. Like, at all. At least not on the SATA. You can't do SATA-based RAID. You can do M.2 RAID, but you cannot do SATA RAID. It says it right here. See, I was right. RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 10 for M.2 only. Not SATA. And the reason why you can't do SATA is because it's X870 and not X870E. That's the reason. Because they're using an ASMedia, an ASM 1164 splitter. They're basically taking this and they're splitting one Gen 3 lane per SATA port. Is that right? How are they doing Gen? Oh man, there's gonna be all kinds of lane sharing. There's asterisks on all 4 of these. So right here, this is like, man, I saw them like, wait a minute, that physically isn't possible. Okay, so here we go. M.2_1 is the first priority. So this one has no lane sharing. This one is guaranteed to always be Gen 5 100% of the time. Dedicated bandwidth, no sharing. And this is basically that. Okay, and this was the M.2_2 will not work with Ryzen 8000. That's because it's a laptop CPU. So anyway, okay, if M.2_2 is occupied, both USB 4 ports and M.2_2 will downgrade to X2 mode. So, ooh, okay, they are doing exactly what MSI did with the Tomahawk and the Godlike. It's interesting. Tai Chi Creator is doing what the Godlike does with the lane. They're not doing lane. They're doing, well. Technically, it is lane sharing. They are bandwidth sharing. They're bandwidth sharing. So they're taking that 4 lanes of Gen 5 and they're sharing it. So if you have a second Gen 5, it doesn't have to be Gen 5. If you put if any M.2, it could be an ancient Gen 3 M.2. You plug anything in that second slot, and now your USB 4 on the back is now on 2 lanes of Gen 4, and your blazing is running at 2 lanes of Gen 5, which means, and we covered this in a video recently proving how this works with the Godlike, an SSD like the Samsung 990 EVO Plus is a perfect SSD for the second M.2 on this motherboard, because this SSD is forwards compatible with Gen 5 X2. So if I plug this in to this slot, it will run at Gen 5 X2 like it's supposed to, and that still means that it gets full Gen 4 X4 speed, because 2 lanes of Gen 5 equals 4 lanes of Gen 4, and the USB 4 will get 2 lanes of Gen 4, which is totally fine, because Thunderbolt 4 requires 4 lanes of Gen 3, which is equal to 2 lanes of Gen 4. And remember, the ASM 4242, man, we should probably be drawing all this in Paint right now, because people are probably completely losing track of what I'm talking about. But yeah, the bottom line is this does exactly what the Tomahawk and the Godlike do. So this is looking pretty interesting. And then so your Hyper M.2 is always available, and it's always Gen 4 X4. And then the final one, if the 4th one, this one down here, if the Gen 3 SSD slot is occupied, the bottom PCIe slot and the M.2_4 will downgrade to X2 mode. So they are literally doing exactly what MSI is doing with the Godlike. They're doing the exact same thing. They're literally copying the MSI Godlike and the MSI Tomahawk with what they're doing with the storage and the lanes, which is not bad. They're trying to get the most amount of functionality out of a single chipset. All right, and then this is all standard stuff, and yeah, I mean, it looks fine. One thing though on here, okay, I thought for a second I saw a Thunderbolt header, but no, they don't have one, and they shouldn't need one because they have USB 4 soldered on. So yeah, I mean, it looks fine from what I can tell. I mean, you said it was $320. That's a pretty good deal because $320 with dual X8 Gen 5 and the option to do either X4 at the bottom or X2 with the fourth M.2. I kind of like what they're doing here, but personally, so unless you really need to run dual graphics cards, or if you're remotely interested in dual graphics cards, I think this is a fantastic value. Otherwise, I would question whether or not it's not worth stepping up to an X870E like a Nova, for example. Because the Nova is, what, $350, and it's the full X870E dual chipset, so you don't have to worry about lane sharing on any of the M.2s. Plus, it has a fifth M.2 that this one doesn't have. Although the fifth M.2 shares the bandwidth with the bottom PCIe slot on the Nova. And the Nova doesn't have a second GPU slot. It only has the primary. So there are a couple of things to think about if you're considering this motherboard. See, that's the reason why there's no such thing as, like, okay, when someone asks me what motherboard should I get, or what's the best motherboard, like, what's the best motherboard? Like, people ask me this all the time, and I'm like, man, that's like a question that I can't answer because I don't know what you're going to do with your computer. It's like, okay, you want me to just randomly tell you a motherboard? Get the Godlike. Get the Godlike, okay? You want me to tell you the best motherboard? Get the Godlike. It has everything. It literally has everything. So if I don't know what you're going to do with your computer and you're asking me what is the best motherboard, what motherboard should I get? What's the best motherboard? Okay, get the Godlike then. If you're not going to give me any info, then you're going to get that type of answer. You're going to get a blanket answer that hits every single checkbox possible. It has RGB. It has 5 M.2s. You can do 7 M.2s. It comes with an expander card. It comes with the postcode debug. In fact, it comes with like a whole LED panel that shows you all this data in addition to the postcode debug. You know, it has like tons of USB-C on the back. So it's like if someone's going to, oh, what's the best motherboard? Okay, Godlike doesn't scratch your GPU because it's not an Asus board. So there's your answer. You know, like if I don't know, that's the answer. If I don't know any details, that's it. But anyway, that pretty much answers the question on that. That was an interesting little discussion on motherboards. But I think we're at the end of the stream here. So that's going to be it, guys, for Tech Thursdays episode 128, Zen 6 and Strix Halo, a look at the future of CPUs. We will be back in a couple of, well, we'll be back next week, but I don't know what I'm going to talk about next week unless Intel's Arrow Lake refresh shows up, and we'll at least talk about it, because, I mean, why not? But yeah, that is just going to be, it's going to be like talking about 14th gen 2 years ago when it first came out, replacing 13th gen. It was basically a copy-paste, and that's what this is going to be. So nothing really to get super hyped about. I think Intel's platform, if you're waiting on Intel, you're going to be waiting another year, because the real thing from Intel is coming next year, just like how Zen 6 is next year. So Intel pretty much puts out a CPU every single year for shareholder reasons. So that's why they've gotten down to the point where it's like, okay, they do a new thing, then the next year they do refresh of that thing, and then the next year they do brand new thing. So Intel and AMD are basically the same. They do brand new CPUs every 2 years, every 24 months. So last year was their upgrade cycle. Next year is their next upgrade cycle. So anyway, that's going to be it. We'll be talking about them at some point here in the near future. Stay tuned for that. And if you're someone who plays Monster Hunter Wilds, and if you want to play multiplayer on Omega Savage, we will be running Omega Savage this weekend. I need to clear Omega Savage in Monster Hunter Wilds. So that is what we will be streaming this weekend. We might stream it on Strix Halo. So if you're interested in seeing how the game runs on Strix Halo, stay tuned for that. I don't know if I'm going to do it on Strix Halo because I don't... The thing with Strix Halo is you can game at 1080p totally fine, but I want to game at 4K. So I might still end up going with my full gaming desktop just because. But we may at least look at it at some point here. So stay tuned for that. Thank you all for tuning in for this episode of Tech Thursdays. We'll be back next week at the regular time with more Tech Thursdays. Until then, take care, and I will see you guys then.